Good morning to most, good afternoon to others, and good evening to our viewing audience across the pond. I am your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. Before we start, if you're new to the channel, please hit like, please hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you're alerted whenever we go live, because we're constantly adding new shows. Like tomorrow, I'll be doing a show with JG Michael. We'll be interviewing filmmaker Brian Yesna at the usual PM time, 6 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Central, and 9 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be a fun show. We did have a great week of shows here, starting out with my interview with prolific writer Cory Doctorow discussing his latest book, The Internet Con. Then we did something we usually don't do. We usually share this for the Champagne Room. We did a call-in show, and we gave the listeners the floor, and that was great. I was actually really shocked about what you guys wanted to talk about when given the opportunity, and we did decide that we're going to do something like that probably once a month. It is a little costly on the phone budget. We blew through the entire month's phone call-in budget on that show, but I really feel it was worth it. I'm sure some of you noticed that there was a different phone number because we lost the last phone number. So I think we can keep this new one. Also, for those of you that don't know, this is the Saturday free show. There's no bonus Champagne Room. This is our way of allowing you guys to get a glimpse of what goes on beyond the velvet rope of the TIR VIP. So if you're enjoying what we do here and you want to support, make sure you like and subscribe. Share if you have the means. Send a super chat. I will attempt to read it on air. I don't have MT with me, who is generally the reader of all super chats, but I feel like she knows when I'm by myself. And then she sends me little personal messages like, hey, super chat. All of us here at TIR would like to send a big thank you to all the subscribers on all platforms and patrons. Without you, we couldn't do this. So if you would like to have access to the Champagne Room, past and present, and be part of the live virtual audience for the Pascal Robert hosted Mau Mau Hour. Join us for movie night like we did last night. There's only one way. Become a patron for as little as $3 a month or $30 for the year. It can all be yours. Also, I was so shocked that people hadn't seen the movie that we watched last night. We watched Nightmare on Elm Street 3. You guys voted for it. It won. Even Jeremy Salmon, who is the movie night director over here at TIR, he had never seen a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I was like, you gotta be shitting me. But we watched Nightmare 3, which is probably the best in the series. I'm actually a fan of a movie that came out. We're going to be talking about horror movies between the years of 1990 to 94, kind of in honor of a really cool documentary series that is just releasing their latest chapter. It's called Searching for Darkness, and they did 3 parts about the 80s, and they have one coming out that we were trying to be a part of, but the schedule is just too busy to try to submit stuff, from 1990 to 94. And I started looking back on those years and was pretty shocked at what came out in those years. And the way they look at horror is kind of the same way I look at horror, where there's a lot of movies that maybe we don't define them as horror, especially something like Silence of the Lambs. I don't think Jacob's Ladder was definitely a horror movie. Natural Born Killers, California with Brad Pitt. We're going to talk about all that stuff. Someone says Frankenhooker in the chat, and I watched that movie. I rented that movie way too many times. You know, I'm probably like a lot of people watching the show that are of it is. I would definitely rent movies that I had no business renting, and I definitely rented Frankenhooker a few times just because I thought it was the most insane thing ever. Super Crack, which does anyone remember how she dies in the movie? How she becomes a corpse? A horrible lawn mowing accident. It's definitely a horror comedy of the silly slapstick variety that I don't think anyone would try to make in this current era. And maybe that's a good thing, but I definitely like that and the basket case movies. Can you guys see me? Let me know, because I'm having some issues here on my end. It looks like the internet's going in and out. They're doing construction to the unit next door, so I'm really hoping they don't interfere with the internet, as that's been one of the big issues here. Right now, we're literally just waiting for the guest to arrive. In my mind, Ben Burgis has a bunch of papers in his hand. He's wearing the sport coat, and he's falling all over stairs, and then the papers are all over the place, like one of those 80s movies. I hope that's not what's happening. Other than that, next week we do have some interesting shows going for next week. We have the author of a book called Dying for Capitalism coming on Tuesday. I haven't gotten into the book yet, but again, signs that this show is blowing up. A publicist hit me up to get the author on, and it's got some really interesting blurbs from people like Noam Chomsky, saying it's one of the best books of the last 10 years. So very excited to talk about that. And then we're going to be doing another Red Zone, because Mac hasn't been on for a while. So we'll be doing a Red Zone Wednesday. I believe you guys will have Pascal back Thursday. I don't have the schedule in front of me. You guys are, someone says Dead Alive. You know, I've never seen Dead Alive. It never seemed interesting to me. It didn't have cool box art. How many people rented movies or even bought albums because of the art? For me, it was all about box art. Chapter Black says the racial, I gotta put this on the screen. The racial elements of Candyman were weird, as having this liberal white lady be who you emotionally sympathize with, while black people who live in poverty are portrayed as superstitious and prejudiced. Again, we talked about Candyman the other night. We'll probably talk about Candyman a little bit today. Candyman was not supposed to be about black people originally. When Clive Barker wrote the story, it had nothing to do with black people. It had nothing to do with poverty, really. So a lot of the analysis you get on Candyman is, in my opinion, a bit flawed. It's kind of what you make up in your head about the movie, because it never really wanted to be those things. It kind of became those things. Because if you look at that movie as it progresses, he's this kind of mythical monster that just keeps on chasing white women. So it's kind of like the most frightening blaxploitation of all time. Like, you're gonna say his name 3 times and he's gonna steal like the hottest white woman in the room. That's weird. It's really weird. But that's why I loved the Candyman's, the original one, and I never got into the sequels. They get too much into the backstory because they're trying to make it all make sense, and I think it just comes out such a mangled mess. And you know, kind of in the age of hyper politics, we want to overanalyze something that's just a mangled mess that was never supposed to be. What did they make? 4 or 5 movies, I think they made of that series. You know, it was never supposed to be that. Someone says Van Jones approved. Van Jones is Candyman. He's the real Candyman. If you say his name in the mirror 3 times, he will appear and just lisp in your ear all night. That sounds like a fucking nightmare. I would hella hate Van Jones lisping in my ear all night. Jimp says I rented Empire Strikes Back because the cover without seeing. Empire Strikes Back has an awesome cover. I think the movie poster to Empire Strikes Back might be the best one. Someone says they only saw Candyman and the new Candyman. I won't watch the new Candyman. I don't want to see it. You know what else I didn't watch? I didn't watch the new Karate Kid. That one, not the Cobra Kai series, but the one with Will Smith's kid and Jackie Chan. And my good friend was a producer on that movie. Won't watch it. Don't need to see it. You don't need to remake that. Didn't seem interesting to me. Tried too hard on the fish out of water story. I was like, I kind of tried to watch it one day. I was like, I can't do it. I just can't do it. Someone says Farewell to the Flesh is a good title, though. Yeah, it's good. Clive Barker is kind of awesome with the way he writes. I just don't want to watch a horror movie hitting me over the head with social commentary all the time, because sometimes it's just too heavy-handed. I think what made Candyman scary wasn't the social commentary, right? Because before I saw that movie, I think most of us, there was a thing that you say in the mirror. That's where Barker gets the story from, Bloody Mary, right? There's some thing you're supposed to do. And we've all had a family member, a friend, mess with us, throw us in the bathroom after you say, you know what I mean? Lock the door. So we already are walking into Candyman knowing the mythology of the mirror monster, right? Nightbreed was 1990, and I watched Nightbreed last night, and it's a pretty good movie. Oh, I just got a text message. Oh, he's coming on now. Professor Burgis is getting the paperwork that fell. The bees. I did have someone says the bees. I hated the bees in Candyman. I was reading. Was I reading or watching? Well, I think there's a series on Shudder or Amazon. I can't remember, but it's about certain horror movie like iconic figures. They do Chucky, Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, and they did one on Candyman. Excuse me. And Tony Todd talks about the fact that he got paid for every bee sting because those are real bees. All this stuff is before CGI. Someone says the new Hellraiser was not that bad at all. I haven't seen the new Hellraiser. I have been tempted to see that. I see our guest is here. Well, since Halloween, we've been having a lot of fun discussing all things spooky, as MT puts it. Since I am a fan of the horror genre, we decided to do some shows discussing different aspects of horror. And one time frame I feel that gets forgotten in horror nostalgia is the 1990s. And instead of taking on the entire decade, we're going to focus on just the early half, 1990 to 1994, in honor of the new horror documentary series coming out, Searching for Darkness, 1990-1994. They did an amazing job on their 80s horror series that's up for streaming on Amazon. 3 parts. I think they're all over 4 hours long, and I promise you won't get bored, and they'll leave you wanting watching more. Now, the 90s is a period where many horror fans have grown tired of the slasher in the woods tropes and all the attempts filmmakers were making trying to create wisecracking Freddy Krueger characters. Too many teens camping trips, dying in the woods, and post-coital bliss was a cliche people really didn't want to see. The 80s icons were also growing stale, as my guest today says, by Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Freddy Krueger, the man that terrorized your most vulnerable state, your dreams, had become a 1-800 pitch man, a Bugs Bunny-like character. Jason Voorhees had left the forest for New York, and Leatherface was all over the place with post-Toby Hooper sequels. True crime was starting to dominate the media landscape, and people were falling in love with serial killers. The wall had fallen, as did the Soviet Union. We were no longer on the verge of nuclear war, and by 1992, we finally got the right-wing warmongering party out of office. It was time to celebrate, not making movies about great fears. In this end of history moment, monsters don't exist because on the global scale, there were no monsters. The monsters were us. Horror doesn't stop being produced. We just changed the name. Silence of the Lambs is more gory than the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. Seven is a gruesome film that stars Morgan Freeman in a role that he will reprise throughout the decade. Grizzled detective hunting a crazy killer, but because there is no franchise behind it, we don't really see it that way. We still have the final girl trope. This time, it's just Ashley Judd. Exorcist 3, People Under the Stairs, Tales from the Crypt television show. The early 90s had some gems, and I have my good friend and fellow horror fan, host of the Give Them an Argument podcast. Please welcome Ben Burgis.
Hey, Jason.
What's going on, dude?
Not a lot. I am awake and doing shit, drinking coffee, at what I think to be earlier than I might otherwise be at a Saturday.
I do. That's why I appreciate you.
So you watched Nightmare on Elm Street 3 last night on the TIR Discord.
We did. And you know what shocked me? Jeremy Salmon had never seen it before.
Oh, no shit.
I was a little shocked. There was a few people that had never seen it before. So what I like doing is when we watch movies like that people hadn't seen before, seeing their reaction to certain things. And of course, I think the people in this TIR universe are pretty fucking hilarious. So
Yeah.
I was laughing myself silly reading a lot of the comments as people were watching the film. And I can't remember which person it was that kind of called out Nancy. They're like, dude, this chick came back and just got everybody slaughtered. She got all these kids slaughtered on her. She could have just stayed gone and maybe they would have lived.
Yeah.
So
no, that's I mean, it is interesting, right? Because that's like such a beloved movie for so many people. I love it, but it's got the song. You can't not love that. But
yes.
It is, I think, objectively, it is at least like 30 to 40% of the way there already in terms of the Bugs Buttification of Freddy Krueger. I mean, like, you think about the first movie, and he's mostly silent, right? He has very few lines of dialogue. The first movie is just kind of creeping around the background. He's got his claws scraping against the furnace. And, by number 3, he's like sticking a girl's head in the TV and saying, "Welcome to primetime, bitch."
Still rewatching that for the first time. I think it's just me and you watched it.
Not that long ago,
yeah. Greatest scene ever. I for some reason last night I was brought back to being like 11 or 12 when I watched that in the theater, and thinking that was the most amazing CGI I had ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And Freddy was the coolest person ever. And these aren't the first kind of anti-hero heroes for people, because they're not even anti-heroes. They are the bad guy that we root for in these movies. And I feel like they peaked at different points, because I think Jason Voorhees movies peak at Friday the 13th, maybe 5.
Okay.
Depending on how you feel about the 5th one, where there's a different person that isn't Jason Voorhees in the suit, because they want to bring the series back. But I think 4, that series really peaks. I definitely think you can't really do much more with Texas Chainsaw after 2 rather.
Yeah.
And
I mean, honestly, to my mind, Texas Chainsaw Massacre takes a nosedive about a third of the way into number 2.
I don't mind 2. I do think it ends kind of whatever.
I mean, my whole thing about 2 is that it started out looking like it was going to be such an awesome movie. At the beginning, there's the guy who's iced like on the road. It's like, oh, something different's going on here. They do all this setup that like everybody is gathering around town for the big game. There's the chili cook-off, that the cannibals are entering. And it's like, oh my God, this movie is going to be the cannibal family massacring everybody who's in the city for the big game. This is going to be on a different level. And then it's like, again, I don't know if they literally ran out of money or what happened, but about a third of the way to halfway through the movie, I'm trying to remember exactly, they're just like, you know what? Let's actually just go back to the house from the first one and do the first one again.
You know, if you read some of the stuff on that movie, and if you can find any interviews with Hooper talking about it, there was definitely a lot of fights he was having because he really wanted to make it a horror comedy.
Yeah.
And the late Dennis Hopper did not like the film. Apparently was kind of a bit of a nightmare to work with. I see what you mean. I know there was a lot of editing things that they didn't like because Hooper had signed that deal with Canon Films, and he goes on to make I think some of his better work. Life Force might be one of his best movies. For those that haven't seen Life Force, definitely check that out. But the canon period for a lot of people for Tobe Hooper is a little all over the place. I think he does Invaders from Mars as well during the canon period. I don't mind those movies. I think Life Force is really good. I think Texas Chainsaw 2 kind of sets you up for what you're going to see from Hooper, which is like you don't know what to expect with that guy. Let's remember this is the guy that directed Poltergeist, which really changes the game. And I don't know. I don't look. I think we have different opinions about 2. I don't mind it as much because I watched 2 first and then the first one.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I'm not going to lie and say I watched the first one first in 1975 before I was born. I definitely found 2, watched it, kind of dug it, and then went back and watched 1, and 1 scared the bejesus out of me.
No, I totally get that. Look, I mean, this is a pretty hot take, but like I never minded. You mentioned Silence of the Lambs earlier in your intro. It's like I never minded Hannibal. Like I think I actually like that movie a lot more than a lot of people do. Because even though Silence of the Lambs later became one of my favorite movies, I've watched that thing many, many times. We were talking about this last night. We were talking about what we were going to talk about today. And I was like quoting verbatim, it's been decades since I've seen this movie, but I was quoting verbatim.
That blew me away. I was like, holy shit.
But so even though it became one of my favorite movies, and I obviously like, I think Silence of the Lambs is about 10,000 times as good a movie as Hannibal. I don't think there's any question about that. Bizarrely enough, I actually watched Hannibal first. I watched that while I was in the theater. Then I was like, oh, I should go back and watch the, so it's like, because of that, I got to sort of watch it as its own thing. And I didn't have the experience I think a lot of people did, where it's like, oh, they have this like immortal classic in their minds, and it's like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about certain things, more so cartoons than movies. If I go back and watch Voltron, I'm like, oh, this is not as cool as it was for 7-year-olds.
By the way, I saw one of the chat things going by and Restream said Matt Gilbert says that one of his most watched VHSs was Videodrome. That is a man with good taste.
Videodrome's a good movie. We were supposed to talk about that one day, and I was like, let's ease into this horror thing before we get all high arty.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, maybe to avoid the temptation to fall into high art, we've been talking about, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and that might be a good way to start thinking about the early 90s.
Yes.
The early 90s saw, I think like, okay, look, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, I don't love quite as much as some people love it. Like, like there are people who insist that it's like better than the first one or whatever, which I never understood at all until somebody told me a little while ago that they think it might have something to do with like people responding more to that kind of Morning in America optimism than the like bleaker vision of the original movie, right? Kind of the same reason so many people like Terminator 2 better than Terminator. I think there might be something there. But it's like, look, so I don't like it as much as people who think it's better than the original. I think the original is one of the all-time best horror movies, and number 3 is the best of the in-universe sequels by far. But people will, sure, like whoever's going to you'll get people making that case about number 3, but like the first one, I think so in there are a couple. Nightmare on Elm Street 5 is, I guess, still just barely in the 80s. That's 89, and by the time you get to Freddy's Dead, which is the
oof.
Yeah, that's the first actual 90s one, right? That I was just looking at. It looks like they didn't make one in 90s. So the first 90s one's Freddy's Dead, which is number 6. And it's like that's the one I remember. I used to have the DVD box set, and it came with a pair of 3D glasses because the 3D
because of the end. Yeah,
at the end of Freddy's Dead. Yeah,
waited all the way to the very end for that bullshit. But look, I'm going to name some movies from the 90s. I actually have some movies from the 90s.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, though.
I'm sorry.
It's look, Freddy's Dead. I'm a little bit more of a defender of than many people are, but like, there's some fun stuff about it. I like the way that they just kind of went for it, and it made me at least more interested than 4 and 5, which is not a high bar. But like, the Bugs Bunnification of Freddy Krueger is complete in that movie. It is complete. And so it is interesting that you also do get, within our time period we're talking about today, another Freddy movie, not in universe. It's the Meta Freddy movie, New Nightmare, and which they are explicit in the dialogue is about, okay, this, Bugs Bunny with birds isn't scary anymore. So like this is the darker, more real. They have to associate it with the real world somehow to make it scary again, which I think goes with some of the trends you were talking about true crime and serial killers and all that stuff. But you had a list.
So we have to remember that Freddy isn't the only sequel that we see in the 90s. Jason Voorhees is also in the 90s. One of your favorite films is a sequel in the 90s, Gremlins 2.
Oh my God, yeah. Gremlins 2 is so good. It's definitely stranger to go back and rewatch now because it's not the bad guy exactly, but the ambiguous guy in the movie is a very thinly disguised Donald Trump, like to the point that if you look at them side by side, his in-universe book, I Took Manhattan, has the exact same cover layout as the Art of the Deal.
They did that on purpose.
Yeah.
They wanted it to be Donald Trump. They were so mad, apparently, at having to make the sequel that they just kind of went for it, called out studio culture, kind of called out corporations in that movie. Again, that to me is one of those movies. There's still some guys from the new left over. That Joe Dante, John Carpenter, kind of. I don't even want to put Wes Craven in there because he's kind of all over the place politically. But those guys still make movies with a little bit of underlying messages in the late 80s, early 90s. Of course, Carpenter does.
Which is one of the reasons that Gremlins 2 is maybe holds up better and is more interesting, because like in a weird way it makes sense to me that Gremlins 2 and Freddy's Dead were made in the same era. They're both kind of these over-the-top, like absurdist mashups of the original Freddy property.
It's because when I'm looking at a list right now of movies from 1990 to 1994, And a few people have mentioned the television series It. And last night, me and Ben were talking about Stephen King. Stephen King was all over the place in the 80s, but definitely on the big screen. I think the only way people thought they could see Stephen King was on the big screen, right? Even going so far as to give him coked out directors privileges.
Oh my God, the
Maximum
Overdrive,
Yeah.
which is like also like, look, I actually really like Stephen King. I've been going back and reading it again, but like, but I don't. It's so confusing to me that anybody would think he would be good at that. Like, what tells you that this is within his skill set?
Right?
The guy who famously hated by far the best movie that was made of
Shining
of any of his books, right? I mean, that's like a AFI like all-time greatest movies in any genre kind of movie. I don't like it. It doesn't doesn't have like the hedge creatures from my book, and Stanley Kubrick's an asshole. It's like, okay, man. I don't trust you about movies.
I mean, Creepshow, he does a good job with Creepshow with his involvement in one.
He does, although he's writing that, not directing it.
He's not directing it, but he's definitely having him, and that's him and Romero's baby.
Yeah.
And Creepshow 1, I mean, we did a whole thing on Creepshow 1.
We did.
Is kind of an awesome homage to comic books. Creepshow 2 is a little more of a almost made for TV anthology series with curse words in it. And we dare not speak of Creepshow 3. The worst. But he does It in 1991, I believe.
Yeah, the 90s is the era of like the Stephen King miniseries.
Tommy Knockers. The Dark Half. Like, he's got so many TV series, but he's also doing movies too. And some of his movies are hitting and some are not. Sleepwalkers did not hit. It's not a fun movie. But People Under the Stairs didn't hit, but it definitely became a cult classic, which you never think you would say with a Stephen King movie, that his movie's a cult classic. But you've seen People Under the Stairs.
I have seen People Under the Stairs, yeah.
What did you think of that movie, which is his middle finger to the Reagans? Massive middle finger to them.
Yeah, no, I remember liking People Under the Stairs. I mean, I haven't watched it as much as certain other Wes Craven movies, but I've seen it. I liked it, and yeah, I mean, you could definitely see the middle finger to to Reaganism in the movie, and as analogies that are occurring to me politically about People Under the Stairs, I'm not going to share because, like, I'm having a good time talking about horror movies, and I don't want to talk about things that are going to depress me.
Hey, can we say this about People Under the Stairs? Ving Rhames. Ving Rhames with hair.
Oh my God, yeah.
Owns that movie. Now the decade also starts off with a movie that I don't think you've seen, but it is my favorite film of this era. Teray Reed had been bitching at me to see Exorcist 3.
Oh, okay.
For like 2 years. And one day I was on a date and we came back here, and she liked horror movies. And so I was like, have you ever seen Exorcist 3? And she's like, never seen Exorcist 3. And we put it on. And I'm not even trying to be funny, dude. I was like jumping all over the couch the whole time watching the movie. Yeah. Maybe that's why she didn't come back. She was like, this guy's too screamy. Can't be with the man that screams. He's screaming and hiding. What kind of man is this?
Yeah, no, I never have seen that. I don't know why. It seems very odd to me that there are sequels to The Exorcist. Like, it's there's something very strange about that. But yeah, I should check it out.
But I found out that William Peter Blatty, when he he's the actual writer of the book.
Right.
The
The
first
Exorcist
movie
is
isn't based on.
Yeah.
He didn't agree with Friedkin 100%, much like Stephen King, right?
Well, because it's I mean, except in his case, right? I mean, Friedkin, the Gladys case,
Mhm.
it's because he's like a super Catholic, and he didn't like, you know, he didn't like the priest dying. He wanted he wanted God to triumph over the forces of darkness, right? Which is funny because it's like I think The Exorcist already doesn't do as much for me, like the first one, as it might for people who were raised with a healthy fear of the devil.
Oh man, I was raised. I don't know if people know this. I was raised in a church. Actually, I lived with my grandparents, and my grandfather was a bishop of several churches throughout Northern California. Where I don't really have that same. I never. It's one of those things you're forced into, right? If
Sure,
you
of
have to go
course.
to, you're forced into it, and there would be evangelical preachers that would come through every so often. And evangelical preachers love talking about the devil. And this is the 80s. So everything I liked was the devil. Heavy metal, He-Man, fucking like anything
I've
cool
heard
was the
that.
devil.
I had a evangelical, like I had a friend from grad school who was raised evangelical.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember whether he said it was his parents, one of his friends' parents, but like either he or one of his friends, like he told me once, like wasn't allowed to watch He-Man because they falsely claimed to be the master of the universe.
Right? It was always like dumb shit, and they were like, I'm like, dude, he's just He-Man. He's like Conan but nicer. and my parents I'm not even gonna get into them, but we've had enough stories about my dad letting me watch kind of anything.
Oh my god, yeah. The first like because I was doing on my show for a while during like I don't know mid-pandemic when it was like super easy to book people all the time. Like we had I was doing like weekly movie shows. Now it's like once every month or two we can get something together with you and Trey. But like doing like these weekly movie streams with a bunch of people, and for the first like 6 of them, none of these are family friendly movies. And for the first like 6 of them, Jason's always like, "Oh yeah, no, my dad took this to me. He took me to see this when I was like 4." I was like, "Really?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ!"
My dad is he's an interesting cat. He's an interesting cat. I'll leave it at that. But The Exorcist scared me. So for those watching in the States, before we had satellites and everything like that, you would have your 3 major networks and then like local stations, UHF stations.
Yeah.
And UHF stations used to always play The Exorcist, Salem's Lot, a lot of these older horror movies a few times a year. And every time they would do The Exorcist and that piano part comes on,
Yeah.
I think that's one of the more iconic, frightening piano lines, more so than even Halloween. I think because there's something about the scene of the priest, that street light, and the house that used to scare the bejesus out of me. So when I finally had the courage to watch The Exorcist on regular television, so we're talking about commercial breaks in between head spinning arounds of Linda Blair, young Linda Blair, it still scared the hell out of me. When I watched it on cable, it scared the hell out of me. I tried to watch the sequel, and I was like, I don't get it. This is dumb. And so William Peter Blatty, when he gets the green light to do the third, which would be the third installment of the Exorcist movie, he goes, I want to call this Legion. I don't want to call this The Exorcist. And the studio's like, no, you have to put Exorcist in the title because that's the only way people are going to go out to see it. It's a proven winner. He goes, 2 was such a failure. Everyone's going to remember 2. No one's going to go see 3. And he's right. I didn't even care that there was a 3. I was like, this is stupid. Why would they make a 3? The second one was so dumb. Teray kept telling me. So finally, that day I watched it. I was like, 3 might be better than the first one.
Okay, interesting.
It is so great cast. There's a little bit of a tie-in from the first one with Father Karras, I believe that's his name. That's about it. They don't really talk about Reagan. it's so good, and the mood that Blatty sets, and this is his first film. So back to the whole, why would anyone let Stephen King do a movie? Blatty does something in his first film where he gets mood and tone so perfect. I've seen that movie, Ben, no bullshit, 4 times. Every time it is uneasy to watch the hospital scene. You know, I'm going to go up. You're having a debate. Let's pitch this.
Yes,
you're debating a black guy, so you're being a racist on October 22nd.
Yeah. It's the Siaka. So yeah, there's a black guy. Is also the vice chair of the Los Angeles GOP. He's also a Breaker U and Babylon B contributor. So debating this guy at the Moroccan Lounge in Los Angeles on October 22nd. So that is a week from tomorrow. And doors at 6:30. Debate starts at 7. You can, mingle before and after with the likes of the legendary Jason Miles. There's a good chance that various other people from the left podcasted extended universe will be there. So yeah, please do come check that out. But yeah, okay. So we're talking about The Exorcist 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, just thinking about kind of the overall arc of horror movies in the early 90s, which is also funny, right? Because it's like, we started talking about Nightmare on Elm Street, which kind of gets peak Catholic in the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that's where
last night, Amanda, is her name
Amanda Krueger? Yeah. That's I'm teaching a in-person class this semester at this college in Burbank that apparently used to be a convent. And the day I started teaching there, I had lunch with the department chair, and he told me that it's on like some list of haunted colleges. So between the two facts, convent and haunted, I keep expecting to see Amanda. I haven't seen her yet, but yeah, like there's like there's a teensy little bit of Catholicism in one. You've got a little bit of stuff with crucifix talk and stuff like that, but it's like just a dash of Catholicism. And then obviously with 3, I mean they introduced the ghost nun, right? And then 4 is 4 the dream child, or is that 5?
4 is the where the kids do the funniest teasing ever that I don't think kids would ever do. Son of 100 maniac, son of 100 maniac.
Yes.
Who does that?
Nobody.
What kids would be like, haha, your mom totally got fucking assaulted at a mental institution by a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And you're the offspring.
But yeah, 5, I guess, Dream Child is where, so that's like 89, and that's where the Catholicism is turned up to 11. I mean, that's like whatever. It's a movie to a large degree about a fetus. But then Freddy's dead. Like there's none of that in there. And in the and certainly a New Nightmare, I mean, part of the, this is going to be this more real, terrifying, version of that. There's no, in a way, right? I think New Nightmare is kind of anticipating, the meta horror of that, like you get later in the decade, right after the period we're going to be talking about, and even into like way later, right past the 90s, shit like Cabin in the Woods. But I think it is part of the same kind of, so even though Exorcist 3 is in this period, right? I mean, I think overall there is a certain like backing off from the kind of ghosts and ghouls and and like cosmic stuff that dominated 80s horror.
And I think if we look at this moment too as when the Exorcist type movies are coming out, they're really slept on and they don't do well at the box office. You know, Blatty goes on to say that the studio said, well, you're right. Maybe we should have called it Legion and it probably would have done better. And, you know, in my monologue, I talk about these Morgan Freeman movies. If those movies come out in the 80s and they would have hit, he would have had a name and they would have been, you know, kind of Indiana Jones style, but for detectives.
Yeah.
And I think Hollywood saw the failure of franchises, but you could just make the same movie over and over again with the same two people. And I watched all those Morgan Freeman, Ashley Judd movies.
Yeah, right. Because it's you get, like, even though it doesn't have the same name on it, you see those guys in the preview. You kind of see what they're doing. You're like, oh, cool, another one of those movies.
Yeah, and you dig it or you don't, right? And I think that kicks off with 7.
Yeah,
and then there's a whole bunch more like that. Maybe 7, I think, is the only one maybe you can call a horror. It's pretty gruesome.
I mean, 7 and like the killer in 7 and, you know, Hannibal Lecter, or not Hannibal Lecter, sorry, although him too in a way, but it's like Buffalo Bill and Silence of the Lambs, right? Are both, you know, those are both like horror movie villains, if anybody, you know, if anybody is, right? I mean, that's, you know, we were talking about this before, and, you know, you made the comparison about Saw, you know, like you could have, like, if you had Silence of the Lambs that was like from the perspective, like the dominant perspective in the movie was the girl in the basement, then yeah, that would just be a straight up horror movie. I think the reason we don't think, and, you know, Jesus, certainly 7 handled differently would have been a straight up horror movie. I mean, as you said earlier, it's, you know, much more gruesome than many horror movies are. I think the reason we don't think about them that way is they're not movies from the perspective of a final girl running around the woods.
Yeah.
They're police procedurals, right? You know, that it's not, you know, I mean, I suppose you could do the Nightmare on Elm Street movie that was like the cops in the trench coat, you know, drinking coffee and be like, what happened here? Oh, another one died in his sleep.
You get a little bit of that though in part 1. You know, let's remember in part 1,
That's
Nancy's father, who is a cop, you do get a lot more following Nancy's father around. And I think that has to do, again, with in the 80s, you have these guys that aren't horror movie huge fans.
Wow.
These are cats wanting to be directors. They've directed tons of television, especially in Wes Craven's resume. He did tons of television. And when you watch the first Nightmare, kind of looks like TV. If you go back and rewatch it. And so I think Nightmare 1, in my opinion, a little bit more follows the police procedural. You know, we don't know what the edits look like. You know, maybe there's a cut that probably looks like Police Story. But I think what you get in the 90s is more fleshed out characters. Once you eliminate teenagers in the woods, because you're like, we can't do teenagers in the woods anymore.
Yeah.
And true crime is just what everyone's consuming. Reading it, and we're still talking about an era where people are reading books. Let's also pull back a little bit and remember that this is also the era that soap operas are starting to die off on television, except for the big like 3 that have been around for like 70 years.
Yeah.
Other than those, all the other ones, the Santa Barbaras and all the other offshoots of those are done. And now you're bringing in either game shows, which are cheaper to produce, or you're bringing in talk shows, which are cheaper to produce. And those two things need topics, or those things that talk shows need topics. And the big topic for talk shows was serial killers and following true crime. And you get the rise of authors like Anne Rule. Made for TV movies are definitely just going head first into true crime.
Sorry, what author did you just say?
Anne Rule.
Okay.
Not Anne Rice. Anne Rule wrote tons of true crime, small sacrifices stuff. Yeah, you were reading Stephen King, dude, and I was reading, you know, The Housewife, Suburban. True crime BS, because there was no A&E in 1980, whatever that year that was, 88. So these movies to me kind of fall in line with what everyone's consuming in the era. But I just think they're horror movies. This is just how horror is going to look for a while in the 90s, because we've moved beyond the cookie cutter kids in the woods,
Or
and now the police
at the very
procedurals.
least, it's like it's a stage in the development of what horror movies become, right? Like this is sort of I don't know, Hegelian dialectic to this, right? You know, that it's like on the that you get in the period we're talking about, right, in the early to mid 90s. There's this retreat from the from like the monstrous supernatural teenagers in the woods getting slaughtered in postcoital bliss. That people, now people are more interested in the real world, or sort of pseudo real world horror. I think there's kind of a very distorted impression in the universe of a lot of these movies of like how common serial killers are, right? But,
yes. I mean, the fact that police are so good in these movies, like let's be real for a second. We've talked about the Night Stalker before on this show, the actual Richard Ramirez serial killer who is now deceased. Terrifies the hell out of me. I can't really watch too much stuff on him because I remember those moments growing up in California where he was killing people. He did come up to the Bay Area and breaking people's windows and slaughtering the shit out of them. And to find out that he is only caught because police beat up his cousin and they told him who he was. There's no crack police work. Like you watch a movie like Seven, they're like, they're smelling shit. They're like looking at the room.
But it's Morgan Freeman is like, looking up passages in the Bible.
That's not how police work works. They turn the screws on you and then you usually tell somebody.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's not, the fact that he's caught by a snitch and not by some kind of like amazing forensic breakthrough is one of many differences. And again, I mean, just the rate of this, it's like a couple decades later, this would bother me about Dexter. It's like, how many fucking serial killers would there have to be just in Miami-Dade County for go to work? Like, this is an extremely uncommon thing to happen anywhere. But yeah, like, okay, so the supposedly real horror kind of becomes dominant in this form that doesn't even necessarily look like horror to most people in the period we're talking about. And then like a little after the period we're talking about, then you get the synthesis, right?
Yes.
Of the two, that you restore the screaming teenagers, dying in postcoital bliss. Usually not in the woods anymore, usually in like a suburb, but but you restore that. But this time, the guy who's chasing you isn't some like unkillable, semi-zombified, Jason Voorhees kind of person, or or like the, it's not a demon, it's like it's just a serial killer who's wearing a mask that reminds you a little bit of 80s slasher movies.
I don't want to get too much into Scream because that is 96 and on. But I do have to say that I agree with that 100%, that what we're building up to in the 90s, I think, is the box office failures of guys that kind of made some of their better work in the 90s. I think John Carpenter's trilogy of movies that he does, was it In the Mouth of Madness? What's the other one that he does? He does a few movies in the 90s that a lot of people don't watch, but they're really, really cool. And they kind of are mixing practical effects and the early stages of CGI and crazy stories that are just kind of, they mess with your head.
Okay, so the movies that John Carpenter makes, the time period we're talking about, are Memoirs of an Invisible Man, 92, In the Mouth of Madness, 94, and I guess if you want to count this is getting to be a little bit later, but like in the middle of the decade, there's Village of the Damned in 95 and Escape from LA in 96.
Oh, Escape from LA I did not dig. But when you look at some of these films that these guys made, they get slept on really hard. Even Wes Craven's New Nightmare doesn't really do all that well, even though I thought that was probably one of the better movies of that series.
Oh, no question. I think that was like at least, like, honestly, to me, that's like tied for second place with number 3. I mean, like, that is such a fucking good movie.
Such a good movie. I remember we were watching, I just kept going. I was just like, whoa. Like, whoa. I can't believe it. Whoa. That by the time you get to Scream, which is calling out the cliches of the past, you know, doing this new thing where they're going to get the hot stars of small fledgling networks like Fox. Now we look at Fox some 30 plus years later as a major network. Fox was not part of the big 3. They were a new network.
A lot of true crime stuff. That's
cops. And the WB and the CW. Those were small networks, but they were making these teen shows, and that's all you got in that era was, okay, let's, instead of making the monster the big thing, we're going to pull a Alfred Hitchcock and get the biggest star we can at the time, which was Drew Barrymore for Scream. We're going to kill her off in the first 20 minutes. It's going to F your head up. You're not going to know what's coming. And then we're going to fill it with a bunch of people that you might know from some mildly successful shows on these.
Which was kind of the move for like all the movies that came in the wake of that, right? I mean, those movies were all filled with TV people.
And they were the front of the box. So no longer was it the fear of this looks scary. It was brooding faces of pretty people on a box, and then everybody needed to do that real up close shot that Wes Craven does in Scream, and all those movies to me look the same too.
Yeah, look, and I've got a lot of nostalgia for some of those movies. Certainly the original Scream. I even watched the first couple sequels to Scream many more times than they deserve to be watched. But, but I still really like the first one. I Know What You Did Last Summer, which I have seen those sequels exactly one each, and I don't know why I don't watch them, but I've seen those. But like, you know, once every year or two, I'll get the itch to go back and watch I Know What You Did Last Summer. Even Urban Legend, which, you know, despite the nonsensical final reel, it's like, look, if nothing else, it's Freddy Krueger as a professor in a tweed jacket. You can't not like that, right? So it's like all those movies have a certain atmosphere to them that I respond to, and maybe I just watch them at the right time in my life. But yeah, exactly. But yeah, it is definitely the 90210ization of the slasher movie, especially, you know, like the 3 movies that I just named are like, it's a little bit like how we think of, like, I don't know, like the early mid 70s is this era of like amazing music, you know, that it's like, oh my God, it was just fucking better then. But then you actually go back and look at the top 40 like Billboard charts from that era, and it's like, oh, most of this is, I mean, you've never heard of, and if you go back and listen to it now, it's like, oh, this is kind of shitty, right? Like,
there's a lot of AM Gold in the 70s that's selling tons of records.
So it's like, oh, right. It's not that it was this era of uniquely amazing music. It's just that the only things we remember from it were really good, right? So it's similar. It's kind of similar. It's like the, you know, I mean, the 3, look, and don't get me wrong, it's not even a 1-to-1 comparison. I mean, I'm not asserting that, like, you know, I Know What You Did Last Summer is the Led Zeppelin slasher movies, right? But it's.
I think it's the Sammy Hagar Van Halen era of slasher movies.
I like that. That actually kind of works. But yeah, like, but even those few that I just mentioned are, you know, are the ones that, you know, kind of hold up the best relative to that crop. But there were a million movies that with like, you know, CW, you know, people, you know, well, okay, people who are 35 on some CW to show playing a teenager or a teenager that was being killed by some extremely forgettable,
Yeah.
you know, like person who turned out to just want to be their friend, you'd be one of their friends. And there were so many of those movies that like nobody remembers and they don't deserve to be remembered. And, you know, but like, which I guess, you know, whatever you can say of any era, but I feel like that one maybe in particular because the elements that were going into that synthesis, I think might have really lent themselves towards a lot of particularly forgettable movies.
I mean, look, next time, maybe the end of the month, we'll talk about urban legends and all those other movies, because we could do another 4 hours of us bitching about that. I'm still mad that the Noxzema girl was the killer.
Oh my God. Now, this is what I was saying about the nonsensical final reel. It's like, I enjoy that movie so much up until then.
Yeah.
When they get to that, it's like, no, she fucking wasn't.
Yeah, I remember screaming. I was like, wow. How? She was lifting people up. She's like,
yeah,
big.
Yeah, this, you know, all 95 pounds of her was like hefting that quarterback up to like hang him on the
tree. You're just like, come on, dude. You really like, we have the twist. It's gonna be the Noxzema girl. That's the Noxzema girl. It is. Noxzema girl. Woo! Shoot it. I believe that's how that movie was done. Stephen King is all over the place in the 90s, maybe even more than he was in the 80s. Is Misery his best entry in between 1990 to 1994?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have a lot to say about Misery, but that seems plausible. And that would be interesting if so, because it does fit with the sort of more general story we've been telling about the era. Mm-hmm. Since, you know, I mean, you think about the sort of range of Stephen King villains, right? There's there's the you know, there's the demon clown floating, you know, floating in the sewer, you know, you know, there's there are haunted houses, there are the like Dracula style vampires in Salem's Lot. Who's the bad guy? Woman. She's just some person. She's just a Stephen King super fan.
I think, what's that Eminem song, Stan?
Yeah.
Like, I hope that's a term people stopped using.
Yeah.
I've always found it problematic. You know, people are like, I stand blah blah blah. I'm like,
that's annoying.
You know, that's about him killing he kills his baby's mom in that, right? You know, that's the epitome of like domestic violence. No, we're gonna, okay, whatever, that's fine. Times have changed, I guess. But she's like the first Stan that I can think of in a movie where it's so realistic to a certain point, right? And frightening, because we have seen that play out. I'm a huge heavy metal fan, as you guys know, and I'm a big Pantera fan. Not the biggest, but I'm a Pantera appreciator.
Okay.
And I remember being so heartbroken when Dimebag got murdered on stage. Like, that's a kind of insane thing to think about, that someone comes to your show and literally murders you in front of your best friends and brother. And there's a few stalker fan movies that come out in the 90s. I think there's a movie called The Fan, and I believe it stars Wesley Snipes and Robert De Niro.
Okay. I don't know.
Really good movie. Night Game with Roy Scheider is another movie kind of about obsessed fans. fan obsession, parasocial relationships are even a thing in this era. Do you think these parasocial relationships have ramped up more in the post peak COVID era of media consumption?
Yeah, I mean, it sure seems that way. That I mean, the amount of emotional energy that certainly goes into it in our world and
Mhm.
closely adjacent worlds, right?
Mhm.
They are to like which particular people that people watch on their screen they like or dislike as kind of the the like the prism through which they just think about politics, right? I think has gotten pretty wild, right? Just anecdotally. I mean, that I think the lack of a sort of anchor like the Bernie campaign or anything like that.
Mhm.
That people just end up turning politics into well, I like this guy because I don't like this guy because like because he said something nice about this person who sucks and whatever. It's like it's
How dare
all
you?
it's all fucking silly. So I mean, I guess bringing it back to the main subject. I don't know. I guess you could do I guess you could actually probably do a pretty believable Misery where it was like Hassan Piker super fan or somebody like that.
um, I it's interesting because we don't see who's listening or watching.
Yeah.
I have no idea
Yeah, you
who
always kind of
listens or
forget
watches.
that people do, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like you're out about in real life and somebody starts talking to you about it, you're like, oh right, yeah, that's this is a thing that's broadcast, that like that goes out to people who watch it, and like
Like I'm not famous enough where, Ben is. But I'm not famous enough to like go outside and someone go, "Oh, you're Jason from blah blah blah," right?
I'll bet if you didn't live on a dirt road in Mexico, it would happen more than you think.
Maybe,
But
maybe. But look, I spoke at a college, you were there,
yeah,
and we're doing the thing, and people forget that again, I don't see you. I don't know what you look like. I don't know who you are. I may have interacted with you on a chat, but I don't
yeah,
know if you don't come up to me and say, "Hey, this is, Butt Nugget 45. Oh, BN 45, the homie." I don't know who the fuck you are, right?
yeah,
And I'm talking to someone and they were just like, "Oh, yeah, 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 but I watched that Champagne Room." And I'm like, "Oh, oh." And it kind of my first thing is I get weirded out there. It's like, "Oh, you could have said that up front. I wouldn't have been like a dick to
yeah.
you." I'm pretty chill.
Yeah. I mean, there is the kind of person who will introduce themselves as like, "Hey, I'm Mike Smith, butt nugget 45."
I would appreciate that.
I feel like all the people I've ever met who are like TMBS viewers back in the day, they all kind of introduce themselves that way, right? It's like this is who I am in the chat.
It's look, dude. It's always weird, right? Because again, we don't see these people, and there have been, even going further back before Dimebag gets killed on stage, there was a more liberal. When liberal was like a different word, maybe we would have said leftist. A radio disc jockey that was very fiery in the Colorado area,
Oh, I know who you're talking
and
about.
he
Yeah,
got murdered because
I
he
like
used
Nazis.
yeah, he really antagonized neo-Nazis who were, let's be honest, in the 80s there was kind of this blow up of
Yeah,
neo-Nazis.
I don't care for them. Like if I know we're having a nice discussion about horror movies, and I shouldn't do too many controversial political takes, but like I just don't like the Nazis.
They were look that's crazy because again, you don't think you're saying this guy actually said incendiary shit. He had his couple hour show and he was yelling because that's what you did on
Sure.
radio, right? You need to get
Yeah, yeah.
listeners. You're going to get fire. You're going to yell. And he had a call-in show and he incensed someone. The person had threatened to kill him. And he was kind of like, whatever about it. And then the guy shot him on his way out to his car and killed him.
Yeah, I think, which is kind of, I was thinking about horror movies here. I feel like I've seen 2 or 3 movies, some of which are from the 90s, that feature some version of the sequence where there's like the radio DJ who's like talking a lot of shit on air, and then like somebody comes into the booth and kills them.
I think there was a Tales from the Crypt like that, or at least one of those anthology things that definitely did that as well. Talk Radio with Eric Bogosian is the 90s movie I think you're talking about, where he actually plays a version of that guy that got killed. It's interesting, like when you talk to a guy like Sam Cedar, regardless of how you guys feel about Sam, he actually didn't come up on radio. He comes up in Hollywood, but he had a good stint on Air America. And there was a moment, and people probably won't believe this, but if you spoke ill of the president, especially post 9/11, you were persona non grata.
Oh my God, yeah, that's that was yeah. I mean, ask the Dixie Chicks. That's like there was definitely, like, people have really forgotten just how bad that was in various ways. I think people have forgotten just how bad that was. That, like, period of national madness after after 9/11, like, and it's so weird to me. Like, I saw, all right, you're gonna have to start like a countdown buzzer or something to stop me from talking about this for 90 seconds, guys. I've been mad all week and I don't want to be mad today. But, like, there was a point where Ed Markey was speaking at a rally about the Israel stuff, like not like a our people kind of rally, right? But the other kind. And but he didn't get the memo that you're not supposed to talk like this, so he used the word de-escalation. And one of the other speakers, like 15 minutes later, is, like, chiding him for that. He's like, nobody told us to de-escalate after 9/11. And I was like, I fucking wish they had. If you got in some kind of Men in Black memory wipe in the last 20 years of American foreign policy, it's like, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure we went into the Middle East, we kicked ass, and it was all good. All the good things happened as a result.
No, you didn't know? You didn't get the memo?
Yeah. It's like, Jesus, okay, man.
I mean, those guys were saying what probably we wouldn't think is super incendiary now, because everything is so broken up. So you kind of miss the scale of who they were reaching. Even on a radio station that was that small, they were still hitting numbers on the scale that we can't even fathom right now.
Oh, totally, yeah. That was how people, like, that was the, I mean, that's an era of, like, relative monoculture that, people, like, because it's like now everything people listen to, and not everybody, but like people under a certain age, people with certain kinds of habits, right? It's all self-selected, right? It's like, oh, I'm a leftist, so I'm gonna seek out left-wing shows, whatever. It's like, no, look, you know what people listened to in this era? Whatever was on the radio.
Yeah. And there was only one place to hear left.
I mean, the amount of Rush Limbaugh I listened to back then, because it was what was on the radio.
It was even if you listen to sports, you were going to get a right winger right after the game. There was no 24-hour sports radio yet until the 2000s. and when I think about that time, I remember asking Sam, I was like, oh, dude, I would love to talk to Janine Garofalo. I think she's kind of an interesting character. She's had to me, an interesting trajectory in Hollywood, right? And so I've heard her say some things about the roles that she's gotten. I was like, I'd like to kind of talk to her more about her time on some of these shows. And Sam was like, you act like I got into her like that. Like, nah, it's hard to get a hold of that woman. And a lot of it has to do with what happened with them in the Air America days and the kind of threats they were getting. And that was a different time. And
Yeah.
you were getting some really serious, I'm going to get you threats. It's a scary moment, man. And I think when you think about that and you watch a movie like Misery and you think about a guy like Stephen King, like what kind of hate mail
Oh my
was he
God.
getting? Because he was somewhat of a public figure. People knew he
Well, he's
lived in
totally a public
Maine.
figure. I mean, this is the. I think Stephen King. Look, even now, right? Stephen King is somebody who. Um, I actually don't think even now, right? That guy gets to be anonymous, right? Like that's. I think that's off the table if you're Stephen King. He has a very distinctive look to him, whatever. But it's like back then, right? Because it's like it's again, this is the era of relative monoculture. Not that everybody was reading, Stephen King books. As you said, some people were reading true crime books or whatever. But it's like, but a lot more people were reading a lot of books,
Yes.
and a ridiculous percentage of those books were written by Stephen King. I mean, that's kind of like the old joke about like airport bookstores. There's like the Stephen King section and the John Grisham section.
John Grisham also was huge in the 90s, dude.
Yeah,
So
he was.
huge. So huge in the 90s. I remember doing a class report on Misery before it was a movie on the book.
Okay.
I did my, you had to do like a book report presentation. Right. Remember, I did a book report presentation on that. And I remember the teacher being like, oh God, no more with this kid. What are we going to do with this guy? One of my favorite films from this era got remade this past year, and that's Candyman.
Which is
what was your first impression of this Clive Barker classic?
Which movie did you say?
Candyman.
Oh, Candyman.
Don't make me say it again. God damn it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Don't say it.
Because if another black man appears in here that's not named Lionel Miles, I'm going to be terrified.
Yeah. I guess you're looking at your image in the computer. It's unclear if that counts. But yeah, you don't want to say the name again.
I don't want to say it again. Yeah. See him.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I may be an atheist and a materialist, but I do not say that. Oh yeah. No, that is a really interesting movie. What year is that movie?
92.
92. Okay, yeah. Because it is interesting. Because on the one hand, that is a supernatural movie, and it's and it's like sort of I don't know, it's like supernatural, right? I mean, it's like it's in the setup, but it's there is something that's more grounded about it, right? Like, I mean, just the fact that, I mean, it's just interesting in itself, right? That it's like, it's not, that this guy is not by and large, he's not like, he's not killing, teenagers skinny dipping in the woods that they could find near their suburb, right? I mean, he's killing people in this, housing project, right? Cabrini Green. And so, I mean, that itself is probably the most kind of interesting shift just on the face of it. That's represented in that movie that feels different about the movie, but it's like, I don't know, there's also something about the tone that feels very different to me, looking back at, Candyman, that like, it doesn't, I don't know. I mean, it just doesn't have, like, there's so many, horror movies from the late 80s, early 90s that it's like, I don't know, I kind of think of as like movies to pop on, while you're, like unwinding and ordering a pizza or something. And it's like, I don't know. It's like, Candyman is just a much, it's just, it's not more gruesome exactly, but it's like, I don't know, more somber somehow.
I guess
I don't know. Maybe I need to. It's been a long time since I watched it. But
I remember this very, very vividly. There was a friend of ours in this city called Hercules, California, and we were watching. It was probably about 8 of us watching Candyman for the 100th time.
Okay, yeah. So you've seen this. I should say, I've seen this movie like a couple times.
Oh no, we watched and so there was a scene. There's a scene where Virginia Madsen's character is asking some like neighborhood hoodlums, right, about Candyman. And this one black dude walks up to her and goes, "You looking for Candyman, bitch?" And then they hit her upside the head. We rewound that so many times. We rewound it probably like 55 times. Every time we're just like tears streaming down our face. We couldn't fucking stop laughing.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good point. Like, I there is an element of the sort of over the like that kind of like gruesome comedy to it that I think coexists. When I'm talking about, somebody in the chat said it was like there's a sort of element that's like gothic romantic horror to it, which is totally right.
Oh,
like,
it's Clive Barker in a nutshell.
Yeah, and this is maybe part of what I was trying to get at earlier, but like also though there is something about the premise that does really lend itself to that kind of gruesome comedy, that it's like the fact that the thing that you do to roll your eyes at it is the very thing that's going to get you killed.
Like, what I don't like about Candyman is how people there's this anti-racist revisionist look at this movie. And sometimes when I see, like, I love watching these like black horror things, like horror noir. I thought was like I've watched it quite a few times. It's kind of a fun watch, but it's, to me, I feel like they're a little too sanguine about movies to a certain degree. Like there's a part where they talk about Candyman and say this was so great for young black kids to finally see themselves on screen. I was like, as a fucking killer? Like, that's really what young black kids want to see themselves as? Like, I've been black for a minute now, 46 years. And never did I think, one day I too can be Jason Voorhees in a horror movie. Who gives a shit? I never thought that was what we would aspire to be. And when I see a lot of the academic takes on this, there's actually kind of a pretty famous film class now where they actually teach Get Out as part of the curriculum. And, while I rather enjoyed Get Out, and I did enjoy Us, while I enjoy Candyman, I think there's a lot of overthinking with some of that stuff. And it's insane to me to say, like,
what I want now is the Boondock style impression of Martin Luther King saying, "I have a dream that one day young black boys and young black girls could be massacred by serial killers, not just young white boys and young white
I have
girls."
a dream, Ben Burgis, that one day little black boys can have hooks for hands and pog white women to follow them all throughout the hereafter. I have a dream. They make white women different nowadays, Ben Burgis. They drop it like it's hot and they clap. My God, I've seen the mountaintop. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Pog loving MLK is the new character we have here on TIR that is definitely designed for cancellation. I'm going full on, just jumping with both feet in. to the cancellation pool.
Sure.
And I want it to catch on because Pog Hunter MLK.
Like on his I think on his last album, Doug Stanhope has this whole riff about how mad he is that his name never came up in like the Me Too wars about comedy. He starts talking about like all the things that he did that people could turn into scandals, and he's like, "Come on, what do I have to do?" You know, it used to be that when like the set was starting to get a little dry and nobody was laughing, I would just drop my pants. Like, you know, why is nobody trying to Me Too me?
Yeah, there's so many movies do you think there's movies in the 90s in this era that can't come out today? I feel like outside of the crazy stuff that was more trauma adjacent, like Frankenhooker, yeah, you can't have another Frankenhooker, you can't have another Basket Case 2, you can't have another I don't know. I other than that, I think most of these movies could have a life.
Though. Like, because I hear people throw around claims like that all the time. You know, this couldn't come out today, that couldn't come out today. It's like maybe, man, I don't really know what that means though, right? Because it's like, do you like? I know what somebody means when they say that something couldn't come out today. If they mean that it wouldn't be like greenlit by a major Hollywood studio today, but it's like half the time the movies they're talking about when they say that were, you know, pretty indie at the time they came out.
Yeah. I think even these like kind of rape revenge movies, which I fucking hate,
like the I Spit on Your
Grave, Last House on the Left, that stuff all got remade in the 2000s. Pre-Me Too, they're pre-Me Too, but they made, I don't know if you know this. Do you know there's like 5 I Spit on Your Graves?
I actually did know that. I've only ever seen the first one. That was like one of those movies that I think I got, or my friend Les might have gotten from, you know, at the Video to Go in Lansing, Michigan. They had that like they had like a bin of like movies they were like selling outright for $1, and I think that may have been a discovery from that bin. Which is interesting actually, because I just yesterday, you know, I've got look, I'm a, you know, pretty basic person when I you know, when I'm driving around town and I don't I'm not listening to a podcast or something, I just have the radio on. Oh, it's always KLOS, the classic rock station, which is like a whole time capsule in itself. And they were doing a thing yesterday where they're having people call in and tell them their favorite horror movies. And somebody said I Spit on a Grave, and I had to think about it for a second. It's like, is that a horror movie? I guess it is.
It's yeah. I mean, I think of horror. I mean, Sean Moon said something kind of interesting earlier. He goes, I think what's the drug movie? I can't think of the name now.
Got to narrow it down, man.
I know, such a doucher.
That one movie that was ever made.
Jared Leto, Double Dildo.
Okay.
What's it called? Requiem for a Dream.
Oh Jesus, that drug movie! I remember seeing it because the only thing I knew about it when I watched Requiem for the Dream in the theater. I was living in Pittsburgh back then, and it's like the only thing I knew about it was that they. I thought the poster looked cool. I hadn't seen it. And it said like from the maker of Pi, right? You know, and I remember like watching that movie and liking it. So it's like, sure, I'll give it a chance. And I remember, yeah, it's a good movie, but it's like, Jesus Christ. I remember leaving the theater after I watched Requiem for a Dream being like, okay, I need to go home and take a shower now.
I think that's a horrific film.
Yeah.
It ends with ass to ass. Like that is so horrific, right? Again, I look at horror as anything that's terrifying. It doesn't have to be the whole movie. I don't need goblins and blood to scare me. I said this the other day, I think with Varn, one of the scariest movies as a child was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Large Marge, you know, gives him the ride. That's the scariest shit in the world when I was a child.
So
it still makes me jump, you know, today as a 36-year-old man. So for me, horror, my definition is a little more broad.
Yeah.
And I think when we look at a lot of these movies, they don't necessarily get thrown into the horror category. Cape Fear is a scary movie.
Yeah, right. So I think with like a narrower definition, yeah, I don't know if I think about it as a horror movie exactly, although it's an interesting question, why not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in a lot of ways, I mean, it's funny. It's a little bit like the argument the Terminator is a slasher movie,
Yeah,
but like
I hope
because
you like that video I sent.
yeah. No, I like that video. That's good. That's a good video. But yeah, Joe Blow horror. But yeah, that like in a way structurally, Cape Fear is totally a horror movie, right? I mean, it's like a very classic kind of horror movie plot. You know that there's the guy who's seeking revenge, who starts out doing all this ominous, creepy shit to like warn you of his presence,
Mm-hmm.
and then he starts killing people, and as you're like escaping, and what like it's in a lot of ways, yeah, that's like a very classic kind of horror movie structure. Like I said, I'm not quite sure why it feels like it goes in a different box exactly, but yeah, no, I mean, I understand why some people don't like the early '90s Cape Fear. Um, there is something, it's like very over the top, but like I love that movie. Like I could, like anytime, I was in Rosarito and you're like, hey, uh yeah, I want to let's pick up some tacos and bring it back and let's watch the '90s Cape Fear. I'd be like, hell yes, I will watch. That is the bad guy in that movie is counselor,
Oh,
right? Like
oh,
that is so good, and it's like, yeah, it's like a little cartoonish, but it works for me, and it's so like there's such a nice sweaty atmosphere, and it gets so twisted as it goes on.
oh, dude, it's another movie where I feel, me personally, I have to take a shower after it's over. It's one of those like you feel you got to watch a comedy like I'm putting on Mr. Show or Strangers with Candy or something after that, over because it's just so like oh.
Well,
Go
it's
ahead.
funny, thinking about putting on a comedy for a little relief after all this unrelenting darkness. You mentioned Pee Wee earlier, and that reminded me that the original Buffy movie came out during this period.
Oh, that is right. The original Buffy movie is actually it's pretty good. Actually, I think it still
I
holds
like
up.
it. Yeah.
I don't. Do you believe it still holds up? I think it still holds up.
Oh, I think it still holds up. Yeah, no, I've watched that thing many times. And like most recently, I don't know, not that many years ago. It's no, it's fun. It's fun, right? It's got um like yeah, I mean it is just like a nice, fun horror comedy like that yeah, I mean I'm always going to enjoy that movie. The principal who's what's his name, he was like Jimmy James in News Radio, right? It's the
I can't think of the guy's name either.
yeah, but who's like because it's already in the early '90s, this is the cliche, right? He's like he's like talking about he's like trying to tell the kids stories about like dropping acid at Woodstock and shit like that. That's the old person in the early '90s stereotype. um that guy's hilarious. It's yeah, I mean it is interesting, right? Because it's like definitely drawing on a certain kind of earlier vampire movie that was already pretty lighthearted. Your Fright Nights, your Lost Boys, right?
Yeah, Near Dark.
Yeah. I mean, Near Dark is
Yeah.
definitely the darkest of
I
those.
mean, the return of the vampire, to me, the gothic vampire is returned in with Anne Rice's novels. First of all, Anne Rice is such a big presence in the mid to late '80s. And then by the time you get the movie Interview with the Vampire with kind of an all-star cast, right?
Yeah,
Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, and What's the young lady's name?
Uh-huh.
Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You know, that's a major movie for people. And then I think the edgy vampire goes away. Buffy kind of brings it back a little bit, but it's a little more satirical.
Yeah.
I don't think until we get Tarantino's Dusk Till Dawn do vampires get truly scary again.
Oh yeah. I want to go see that. I was going to, and I had COVID, but they might be doing it again before the end of the month. The New Beverly, which is Tarantino's theater, is actually doing like a midnight showing of Dusk Till Dawn. But yeah, what year is that?
Dusk Till Dawn. I think that's like late '90s, isn't it?
Yeah.
Someone watching this has to know. I'm gonna name some as we're creeping up on an hour 45 minutes. I'm gonna name some movies that came out in 1990, and you tell me if you remember any of these.
Okay. Probably very few of these, but keep going.
Misery, right? We start off the decade with Misery. Sure. Jacob's Ladder.
Oh yeah. I don't. I know it's a super classic, but I need to go back and watch that again. I don't remember that as well as I should.
Nightbreed.
Nope.
You guys can watch that. You can watch Nightbreed on YouTube for free if anybody doesn't have a streaming service. Watch it on YouTube. Child's Play 2 is 1990.
Okay, yeah. I actually went back and watched Child's Play 1 again not that long ago. I had seen all of those. I remember as like a teenager, I was like, I don't know, 15 or something. Like I remember marathon watching like the first 3. That might have been all that existed at that point. But like I went back and rewatched the first one not that long ago, and I think that actually really holds up. Like because it's for so much of that first one, other than the voodoo curse scene at the beginning, which I guess might fall into the category of things you could have a discussion about what you can do today. But but other than that, for so much of that movie, you don't quite know whether any of this is even really happening.
Yeah.
Like it's all off screen, and there's like it's so much creepier because of the way that they play with that ambiguity about whether it's real, and it's like a very like effectively done thing. It's kind of funny to go back and watch that again and think about it in that way, because it's like, you think about those, like especially like the later Chucky movies are like so over the top and cartoonish.
But they're fun.
Sure, yeah, no. Yes,
they're supposed to be fun. I think they get it by the time they get to like 2 and 3. Here's a movie that I don't know if you've seen. I'd be very shocked if you've seen this, and I'd also be very shocked if the viewing audience has seen this. I used to have a poster of this in my room. The Guardian, a William Friedkin movie, 1990.
I have not seen it. No.
A young couple with a newborn baby don't realize that the nanny they hired is a magical nymph who sacrifices infants to an evil tree.
Sure.
Gremlins 2, the new batch. You admitted that you were a fan of Gremlins 2.
Yeah, no, I love Gremlins 2,
yeah. Here's a movie that no one talks about in the 1990, The Night of the Living Dead remake. Comes out in 1990.
Not only have I never seen that, but I'm not sure that I totally knew that existed.
Check that out. Let me know what you think. Here's a movie.
It just seems like such a desecration to do a remake of that movie.
It's a remake, and yeah,
it's like why would you do that? That's I don't know.
I believe it's a scene for scene remake as well.
Well, that's even more pointless. Like, what's the like? Seriously, just show the original one again. Like,
you know what?
Theater, you can just do that.
You know what, Ben? You never cashed in on an IP. Somebody. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Leatherface.
Okay.
Didn't care for it. And that's all over the place. Here's a movie that you've seen that I refuse to watch. I think I tried to watch this movie once and I was like, I can't watch it, because if this guy killed all the buffest dudes in the world, there's no way Danny Glover is going to stand a chance. Predator 2.
Okay. You know what? I actually haven't. I have, for whatever reason, those movies for the longest time were just not on my radar at all. Like for a long time, I think the only Predator movies I'd seen were the Alien versus Predator movies.
Okay, all right, that's fair.
But I actually went back. I shouldn't say go back because I'd never seen it before. Like I told several people this, including you. This was back when I was still living in Atlanta, and everybody was shocked, right, to hear this, because it's like exactly the kind of movie that I would love, and I did, right. But the original Predator, like I had, like the first time I saw the original Predator was like 2022, and whatever. I thought it was fantastic. It's like it is the perfect synthesis of like of a monster horror movie, and like a military action movie. I love Predator, but like to this day, all I've seen is the original, and then a couple of the Alien versus Predator movies.
I've seen too many. I've seen so many of those. I don't even know what I understand. I went to the movie theater to see Prometheus. It, of course, comes out in 1990. Here's one I've never seen, and I'd love to know if you were viewing.
The original It was good.
Prometheus, you said?
No, the original It.
Oh, the original It is really good. Here's one that I've never seen. Maybe the viewing on it's an Argento movie, Two Evil Eyes. You seen that? A duo of Edgar Allan Poe adaptations about a greedy wife's attempt to embezzle her dying husband's fortune and a sleazy reporter's adoption of a strange black cat. Two Evil Eyes. I've never seen this. This comes out in 1990. I'm a huge Argento fan. Psycho 4: The Beginning.
Why not?
I haven't seen. I've seen Psycho 4. I think it was made for TV.
Sounds right.
Psycho 2 and 3.
Well, you told me that 2's the one where he's like trying to be rehabilitated, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
2 should be called Gaslighting the Movie. If you ever want to explain gaslighting to someone, watch Psycho 2. It actually is really, really good. And Psycho 3 is a great popcorn movie, an awesome follow-up to 2. If you want to have a great Psycho night, watch the original Psycho, Hitchcock Psycho. Watch Psycho 2, again, starring Anthony Perkins. And then 3, Anthony Perkins wrote and directed 3. So definitely check all those out. Death by Temptation. Have you seen that, Ben?
I don't even know what that is.
Racist.
This was also a theme of those old GTA movie scripts.
If you want to see if your white leftist friend is a racist, just start naming random black movies, and if they haven't seen it, then just look at them and go racist. Have a laugh track. Death by Temptation stars a young Kadeem Hardison, who you may know as Dwayne Wayne from A Different World.
Okay.
And Ben's like, I haven't seen A Different World. He's seen A Different World. And it's funny. He's got a friend that's like this preacher's kid, and he gets tempted by this demon character. It's a trauma movie. I want to say it's like the only black trauma movie they did. It's called Death by Temptation. It's pretty good. One of my favorite anthology series from the 90s that actually comes out is supposed to be Creepshow 3. It is not Creepshow 3. Tales from the Dark Side, the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Stephen King wrote some for that. Debbie Harry's in it. Christian Slater's in it. Who else is in it?
Which is definitely puts the time period, right? Because it's like, I remember we were just talking about Buffy, and I remember one of her lines in that movie when she was trying to resist her destiny as the vampire slayer is, look, all I want to do is grow up, go to Europe, marry Christian Slater, and die. Is that too much to ask?
Remember when he was like a heartthrob?
Yeah.
Who here saw Gleaming the Cube? The skateboard movie? Ooh, that's a deep cut for you guys. Christian Slater and Gleaming the Cube. If you were a skateboarder or a punk back in the day, you probably saw Gleaming the Cube. Maniac Cop 1 is an movie. Maniac Cop 2 is ridiculous, and it has the Maniac Cop rap in it. So watch Maniac Cop 2 just for the rap. Of course, Frankenhooker comes out in 1990. We've talked about Exorcist. Here's one of Ben's favorite movies, Tremors.
I love Tremors.
Comes out in 1990.
Tremors is sort of just an oddly perfect version of the kind of thing it is. I think that's the way to put that.
I've never seen this movie. I always wanted to. There's literally nothing stopping me from seeing it now other than me being a weirdo. Darkman.
Never seen it?
Okay, I think because it had Darkman in the title.
Look, I watched Get Out.
I'm preparing you for
I
your
would have
debate.
watched Get Out a third time.
I would have watched Get Out. You're gonna go to that debate? Like, I would have read Towards Freedom a fifth time had I had the chance.
Exactly.
I'm preparing you. Look, you know how cats win these debates? Win a debate. They're gonna hit you with the race card. Just be prepared. You like a boxer. You gotta always keep your hand. Once you drop your defense hand, you are gonna get slept with a hook. Don't get slept with the anti-racist hook. A Republican will hit you with the anti-racist hook. You won't be prepared. You're going to sit there dazed, and then that's the clip that goes on the internet. You going, and then they're like, racist. So just be hands up. And that's what a good friend does. I went to the theater to see this film. It scared the shit out of me. I do live in Mexico.
Come back, Pat Gilbert in the chat says, I'm not racist. In fact, some of my friends have seen Get Out.
That's how you have to respond to the guy. You just have to be like, you should wear a kente cloth shirt and a kufi. Just like, I would be so prepared for any of, like, I'm ready.
Be like the William Kunstler in the Boondocks. You know,
yeah. Hold your black girlfriend's hand on the way in.
Yeah.
And make sure she's all the way black. Don't come in with no mixed woman. Get her just black. It's like a stovetop. Just make sure she's payphone black. This show just went down a dark hole. This movie, I went to the theater to see, and it scared the hell out of me. And living in Mexico, it continues to scare the hell out of me because spiders here, every so often, I will find a spider that is as big as a baby's foot. Arachnophobia.
Oh, yeah. I remember that movie.
So I didn't know this. Maybe you know this. This movie, all the spiders in this movie are real. There is no CGI. And there's scenes where there's all over those real spiders. That was the thing. What you've never seen Arachnophobia, Ben?
Oh no, I've seen it.
What did you think of it?
I remember liking it. I mean, it's not. I don't know that it actually made a huge impression. Like, I mean, I certainly wouldn't watch it in 1990, but like I have. But I, you know, at some point, you know, the weekly trips to the, you know, the video to go horror section in Lansing, Michigan. I definitely watched Arachnophobia at some point, you know, probably in the 2000s, you know, and it's like, yeah, no, I liked it. I thought it was solid. Like, it wasn't like, it wasn't, I didn't think it was anything special, but it's like, yeah, that's about what I expected from this movie. It's about what I wanted out of it.
Oh, it scared the hell out of me. I won't watch it again.
Okay.
I will not watch it again. Any movies with rats or bugs, I can't do because I lived with both those things for so long. I'm like, fuck it.
Yeah.
There's a few foreign films. I'll pass that up. The Gate 2, Trespassers. Not that good of a movie. It's okay. If you're a fan of The Gate, you can watch it. Same director, actually, and actually one of the same kids from the first movie. Stephen Dorff isn't in it. Didn't dig it as much as the first Gate, but I think if you have a younger child, Sean Moon had said, don't take kids to horror movies. And I agree with that for the most part. A lot of these movies are just too much. But The Gate is one of those movies that if you have like a younger, maybe even tween, really fun movie. Even the claymation, the kind of homage to Harryhausen's claymation, I think is really good in a movie like The Gate. Gate 2.
I mean, my experience with that stuff is like kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum for, than you. I mean, I'm pretty sure that 1992 Buffy the Vampire movie was like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie was about as scary as I was allowed to watch as a kid,
No, like I said, I was left alone. My mom worked nights and she was off living her life, and I was left alone with some pirated cable and a lot of time on my hands. So in between reading true crime and
Janos in the chat says Ratatouille is body horror for kids.
Janos, look, you don't understand how big those rats were. Ben will tell you this. I leave a light on in my house.
It's true.
Because I'm terrified of noises. And we're pretty good about rodents out here.
Yeah, rodents aren't like, I mean, rodents are one of the few things that's not an issue there. Like the giant spiders check, like
scorpions check.
There is, roving packs of stray dogs check. The occasional, I was telling somebody last night, went to our friend Nando was having drinks for his birthday, and so I was like kind of interested. I was like talking to a lot of people from other worlds that he's in that are not, kind of have to do a long explanation of how I know him or what I do, but I was like telling one of these people about living in Rosarito, and it's like, like I would literally be out walking my dog, and I just like there'd be like a horse standing in the middle of the road, and it's like I literally don't know whether this horse belongs to somebody or it's a wild horse.
There was two horses the other day, and I feel like they've been following me, so I've been recording them, yelling at them while I'm recording them, kind of like what do you people say, Karen? One of those people that wants to complain to the manager, and I'm like recording. I was like, I see you, horses. I see you. And they like look back at me like, fuck that motherfucker's back. And then they like walk away because I don't know what they want. And horses scared the shit out of me. They can kick the fuck out of you.
Yeah.
And there's some ghetto ass dogs out here. There's some ghetto ass horses out here as well. So there's weird shit.
Also, if anybody ever wanted to set a horror movie there, the number of times that I've been out and about in Rosarito, I've like walked down the beach at like night when there's been all kinds of fog, and there are just random brass bands playing for like 3 people in the middle of the beach at night. I'm like, what's going on here?
There's no one there. You're like, who the fuck are you playing for? Like it's band practice. Okay. Are you real?
Yeah, exactly. You sure you're not the ghost of some brass band from the 1940s?
I was thinking, because there's definitely aspects of living out here that Ben did not appreciate, that most people don't appreciate, and one of those aspects is when the water gets shut off or when they throttle your water.
Yeah. I like Rosarito a lot. I'm actually going to go down to visit sometime very soon, I hope. But like but yes, the random water and electricity shutoffs, I definitely did not love. Just how often that happened and how unpredictable it was.
I have PTSD every time I turn the water on because you get too comfortable. You're like, it's gonna shut off. And
exactly.
I texted Ben like a half hour beforehand. I'm like, it took me a while to get the script and stuff down for the show, and I finally got it down. And I send it over. I'm like, I'm about to get in the shower right now. See you in a little bit. And as soon as I turn the water on, it's that thing where they throttle the water, and it feels like 2 like Mexican guys peeing on you.
Well, I'll take your word for it.
I was like, God. All I could think about was like, yeah, This is literally why Ben was like, I'm not going to stay. Like, that was the moment. It was like, I'm not renewing this lease. I knew that's like, why'd you leave? You ever been peed on by two Latin fellas? It's what it's like taking a shower out there.
I like that your impression of me just now was like, it wasn't all the way there, but it was like 10% of the way to Norm Finkelstein.
Yeah. Someone said, oh, you're Jewish. Oh, Derek Varn told me last night that I have to stop, or Thursday night, I have to stop doing the anti-Semitic.
I mean, good luck with that, Derek. I don't think that's going to happen.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Here's another movie that you have to see if you haven't seen it, from someone I actually call a friend, Blue Diamond Phillips.
Okay.
The First Power.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen The First Power?
Nope.
A dedicated LA police detective and a female psychic must stop a demonic serial killer who is given the powers of resurrection, teleportation, and possession.
Yep, that is a 1990 movie. If I
That's a good movie. Here's a movie that I never watched, but I did watch Mary Shelley's Frankenstein that comes out in the 90s. Frankenstein Unbound. I never watched that.
Yeah.
Did anyone see? John Hurt is in it. Raul Julia, Bridget Fonda. It's a Roger Corman film.
It's like it was a movie from from 91. I just looked up when it was from. That's like that description you just gave was like reminding me a little bit of like some movies in this era. Is Dead Again? You remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I do remember that. I don't know if I would call this horror. I guess it's horror.
Well,
again,
not sort of, not really. Like it's like but you were, yeah.
Here's a movie that maybe you saw, definitely didn't see in 1990, but you probably saw it after the fact. Kind of an all-star cast. It kind of sets the tone for what we're going to see in the later 90s with let's take the hot young stars of the day and put them in a film. It didn't hit, considering the star power in this film. Directed by Joel Schumacher. I'm going to tell you who it's starring. Kiefer Sutherland. This is in 1990. Kiefer Sutherland, Kevin Bacon, Julia Roberts, and Billy Baldwin.
Okay. What is it?
Flatliners.
No.
Yeah, not too many people. It was a huge. It didn't hit. It did not hit. I think they figured out how to do the whole we're going to put all the pretty people in a movie in the 90s. Silent Night, Deadly Night 4 comes out in 1990.
Sure. That's awesome. They got up to. Okay. Yep.
Slumber Party Massacre 3 comes out in 1990.
Yep. That's kind of 1990 is like kind of the time for a lot of oh my god, they made 4 of those.
Yeah. I've never seen this movie. Here's a movie I've never seen. It's a foreign film. It's a French film. I've never seen it. Maybe people watching have seen it. It's called Baby Blood. When a strange creature crawls into a woman's uterus, she becomes a killer in order to feed the tiny terror growing within her.
Haven't seen it, but sold.
I want to watch this movie now. Can we watch this movie? Is it possible? I got to find out. Here's a movie that did not need to be made. I enjoyed the first Prom Night. It's not a great film.
No.
It's just one of those like, it's cool.
Sure.
Prom Night 2. Definitely didn't really dig Prom Night 2. I had no idea they made a Prom Night 3, The Last Kiss. So if you've ever seen Prom Night, there was no
I've
Mary
seen
Lou.
Prom Night, the original. I mean, I haven't
Yeah.
seen any of the rest of this shit.
There's no Mary Lou in the first Prom Night. So Prom Night 2, Hello Mary Lou, they just made it all up.
Okay.
There's no fucking Mary Lou in the first. I can't think of the woman that would die. That was the prom queen.
So, I mean, I will say one thing that just occurred to me is not in 1990, but in the era that we're talking about today overall, on the subject of movies with all-star casts, in 1992, there is a movie that I am a massive fan of. I love this movie. I know a lot of people probably have a lot of different feelings about it, which is the Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Mm-hmm. What year is that? That's further down.
That's 92. I just looked it up.
We're still in 1990s. Slow down.
I mean, I'm sorry, man. I haven't seen Slumber Party Massacre Part 15. Like I wish I could help you out here, but I never got around to that.
Have you seen? Okay, here's a movie. Okay, we won't do that one. No one saw that movie. Because you have to kind of keep it within like what movies have people actually seen. Like Maniac Nurses Find Ecstasy. I'm going to assume most people haven't seen that.
Oh, I mean, you haven't seen the Maniac Nurses Find Ecstasy poster in my apartment? I put that up after you guys came.
Like, no one's seen I bought a vampire motorcycle. Like no. These are real films.
Yeah, I want to know what the theatrical release was on I bought a vampire motorcycle.
It's 101 minutes. It's when a motorbike gang kills an occultist, the evil spirit he was summoning inhabits a damaged bike. The bike is then bought and restored, but reveals its true nature when it tries to exact. Well, summary. Oh, Jesus. Get hit with pop-ups. Vengeance on the gang and anyone else who gets in its way. Really? I had to do that all for that one line? But yeah, that's what I Bought a Vampire Motorcycle is about. So we have to find that movie and watch it. It's 5 out of 5 out of 10. 5.5 out of 10.
I'm gonna watch the whole movie, but if Brandon Tennell does like a 20-minute thing about it, I'll watch that.
One of my favorite series comes out in 1989, but definitely kicks into high gear in the 90s, which is Tales from the Crypt.
Yes.
And you didn't see that until you came over here, right?
I didn't know. I remember, because you had it on in Rosarito. I was like, oh, what is this? Kind of reminds me of Creepshow. Like that was my, I knew what it was or whatever. Like, but like I hadn't seen it before.
Another anthology movie that I actually really liked back in the day. It's like a horror Western, which sounds a little strange. Grim Prairie Tales.
Okay.
Starring James Earl Jones.
Oh, no shit.
Brad Dourif, who you guys may know as the voice of Chucky. It's only 86 minutes. It's a fun anthology. Check that out. I'm going to assume you never saw Daughters of Darkness.
No.
That's who you need to go to that fucking debate with. Hellgate. You ever seen Hellgate?
Fred, not. No.
A motorcycle gang kidnaps a young woman, Josie, from a diner and brutally kills her. Many years later, the girl's father finds a magic crystal that can bring the dead back to life and uses it to exact revenge.
I mean, at this point, this is like, we're talking about music from the 70s, it's like I thought we were on here to talk about Zeppelin, and it's like okay, I'm gonna go through every single item in the top 40 chart from. Have you listened to Black Coffee's single "Good Enough for AM Radio"? No, okay.
AM Radio.
Have you listened to Humble Pies, 1972 chart topper, forgettable guitar riffs.
Forgettable guitar.
Like, I don't know. No, that never, Spotify never recommended that one.
No, well, that's how you know you're not a real LA person. Because if you're a real LA person, you'd be pulling out like, this is a fucking humble pie deep cut.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a real.
Someone says Jason's listing off movies that don't even have a Wikipedia page. Ben can attest to this. If you know me, those are the movies I look for first. If you don't have a Wikipedia page and I can find you, I'm watching it. Here's a movie I recently watched, and I thought, this is a pretty good movie. Pale Blood. You ever seen it? Wings Hauser is in it, and I do kind of like anything with Wings Hauser. Wings Hauser and Diana Frank. They're people that you may not know their name, but if you see them, you're like, that guy. A vampire arrives in Los Angeles to investigate a recent series of murders which bear the hallmarks of vampire attacks. Wanting to track down the murderer, he hires a private investigator who herself is obsessed with vampire mythology. Pale Blood. Check it out. It is a fun watch.
I would, from the description, that's actually a movie I would watch. Yes. You are going to have to hold off on the GTA breakdown of Canned Heat's discography.
We're talking about nothing but bread B-sides today. Bread B-sides.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? If I just did a show talking about B-sides of classic AM gold music, I'd probably actually make a lot more money.
Probably, yeah.
Like,
I would, what? Yeah, no. When you, you did your your Jason Miles B-side hour LA live show. Like, I really like the people who would show up to that.
we'd sell that room. I'd be standing room only. Fuck. Like, you guys want to talk politics? Boo! There's so much going on. The boo! We want to hear more about Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Fuck. Okay. So Ben, I believe you're coming with me up north to do the book launch, right?
Yep.
We are going to be doing this book launch, and just to kind of give you guys, more plugging of stuff Ben and I are doing outside of this podcast world, it's going to be in a space where my friend Greg does his guitar stuff, and he has all these guitars from Gary Holt from Slayer stuff, Rob Flynn from Machine Head stuff. He's got a Tim Armstrong guitar hanging on the wall, and these are all stuff he fixes for people. And that's why we have so many people coming in that are going to be speaking on this fun panel. And we're trying to, after I get off with Ben, actually, Greg and I are going to have a talk, kind of narrowing down who's all going to be there. We know for sure we got Chris Contos from Machine Head and Forbidden and Attitude Adjustment. Rick Hinault, the original guitar player for Exodus, is going to be there. And there's some more names that we can't confirm just yet. And I know a lot of that people that are going to come to that are probably going to be like gearheads, and most of the Q&A is going to be about what pedal did you use on Toxic Waltz to get that crunch tone. So I'm excited and not excited for all the gear talk, since I am surprisingly not really a gearhead. Here's a movie that comes out in 1991 that I went to the theater to see, that I know Ben has seen probably multiple times. I will not call it a horror movie, and I think it's a huge 180-degree turn from the first one, Terminator 2.
Yeah, I would. Yes, both of those things are true. I mean, look, I really enjoy Terminator 2. I actually watched that again not that long ago, like I think last year maybe. And look, it's a very fun movie. There's a reason why it's so beloved, but again, I think that there's a certain analogy between Terminator versus Terminator 2 and Nightmare on Elm Street versus Nightmare on Elm Street 3. that, the Terminator 2 and Dream Warriors are both movies that lots of people say are better than the first. That in both cases, that seems kind of crazy to me, but I think it makes sense when you realize, like I said earlier, that what they're responding to is the optimism, right? That the original movies are so bleak, right? And I mean, the Terminator is actually, the most the most read thing I ever wrote on the Substack was about time travel movies. That was like it's like 20,000 people or something.
That was the most views you got too on my channel when you did the show on that.
Yeah. It was but like number one, Terminator 1 was in a lot of ways, as we discussed, it has the rhythms of a slasher movie, and it's all, but like crucially, it's a internally consistent time travel movie. You can't change anything because by definition, if somebody's traveling into the past, it already happened. So what are you talking about? How can you change it? Like whatever you did in the past that affects the present already happened. That always drove me crazy. But because of that, right? It's like relatively bleak, right? I mean, it's like, yeah, look, this is going to happen, right? The Skynet, apocalypse is just going to happen. This is set. And so that's why that amazing, although supremely cheesy scene at the end of the first Terminator, where she's at a gas station in Mexico, and they're so worried that people won't get that she's in Mexico that there's like a piñata hanging. I think there's some like chickens walking around. Like, you get this is Mexico, right?
Yeah, and there's no gas stations that I've been to that look like that. By the way,
no,
not
even a little bit. Gas stations in Mexico, in my experience, look exactly like gas stations in the United States.
Pretty much.
But yeah, it's but that the storm is coming scene at the end of Terminator, right? It's all about the sort of inevitability of, I mean, look, you're going to prepare for it. At least you survived long enough. You're going to have John Connor, but but the actual apocalypse is not avoidable. Whereas I think like Terminator 2, I think what a lot of people like about it is like, oh no, it is avoidable. It's cool. Don't worry about it. And it's like the same thing as with Dream Warriors, right? That it's like I think a lot of what people responded to is like, no, it's cool. This, we can like actually get together and kick his ass
together.
Yeah, exactly.
The power of comradeship. Here's a movie that Ben watched while he was down here, not with me. Popcorn comes out in 1991.
Yeah, I don't know what I think about Popcorn.
It's a watchable Sunday horror film. Don't try to read too much into it. That's how I look at Popcorn.
Fair enough.
Pit and the Pendulum comes out in 1991.
Yeah, a few movies we've already talked about are 91. Freddy's Dead is 91.
Freddy's Dead is 91. Yeah.
Cape Fear is 91. Silence of the Lambs is 91. People Under the Stairs is 91.
Mm-hmm. Naked Lunch. Did you watch Naked Lunch? I've never seen Naked
Lunch. I did watch Naked Lunch. You should watch Naked Lunch.
I want to watch Naked Lunch. It looks good. That's 1991.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
It's a very that's kind of like that and Videodrome are kind of like maximum Cronenberg.
There's a lot of horrible films that come out in 91. Here's one I've never seen, but I heard it's pretty good. Sometimes They Come Back. It was one of those Stephen King TV movies.
Yeah, I feel like I probably watched Sometimes They Come Back like on like VHS in 1999.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it was one of those movies, and it's like it's one of those things that it's like, hey, Stephen King thing. I'm gonna like on my way home from work, I'm gonna like stop and pick up a DVD to read. Sorry, DVD. What am I talking about? 99 VHS, right?
There you go, traveling through time again.
Yeah, exactly, right. No, I did not have this technology at that point. Yeah, I'm going to pick up like a VHS rental and like stop at the, this is again, during my 2 years living in Pittsburgh, I was going to stop at the like, that like, kosher pizza place in Squirrel Hill on my way home, and pick up pick up a cheese pizza and get and get a VHS and go home and enjoy it. And I did, and I enjoyed it, but it's like my memory of that movie is like 1.5 scenes.
Like when we talk about stuff that's sequeled out in the beginning of the 90s, where there's this kind of weird, we can make our money going straight to video because we haven't got the blow up of blockbusters yet. There's still, gajillions of dollars these guys are making in the mom and pop realm of movies.
Yeah, it is so crazy that we've traveled so far from that now everybody's nostalgic for Blockbuster.
Which is, I'm not so much as nostalgic for Blockbuster as I am for neighborhood video stores, because I was that kid, and I don't know if you guys were the same way. I would love the posters, and they would get them free. And there was this one video store my mom would go to because, they get the promotional stuff. And they would just see me look at the posters. And I remember one day, I couldn't have been more than like 9 or 10. And one day I remember the lady saying, "Do you want one of these?" I was like, "Yeah." So every time we would go get movies from there, they would look in the back to see if there's any posters I wanted, and they would give me the posters. Blockbuster's never going to do that. They're never going to give you end cap displays like that. And these people would give me like end cap displays and fun stuff like that. So I miss that kind of relationship that you can have with smaller businesses that aren't kind of, beholden to, corporate mandates. And again, that's a whole different show you want to get into about horror, I think.
No, but totally, right? I mean, it's like, look, I miss Blockbuster to a certain extent just because, like, I have fond memories of the era when Blockbuster had already eaten everything, and I still, but I still enjoyed going out to rent movies. But it's like that's a sort of very degenerate nostalgia because it's like what I'm missing at that point is the already thoroughly homogenized thing that had replaced the thing I actually liked, but it was still better than not having anything.
Do you remember waiting at Blockbuster? Is anybody watching or listening to this remember waiting at Blockbuster for someone to return a movie? You'd be like, "When is blah 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 coming in?" There was always the new, and you'd sit there and wait. And at Blockbuster, if you remember, stayed up until midnight.
Yeah. No,
so you wait all night for someone to bring something back.
What I really miss is, as I said, that video store that I've already mentioned a few times in this discussion, Video to Go, and the Frandor Shopping Center in Lansing, Michigan. That place was awesome, and actually it lasted way longer than you would think. Like most of the mom and pop video stores were gone like years before Video to Go finally closed down. But yeah, like it's not. I do miss the experience on a basic level, right? I mean, so there's a essay with an awesome title by Freddy Krueger that I really liked from several months ago called "It's So Sad When Old People Romanticize Their Past." Also, the 1990s were objectively the best time to be alive. And but like some of the stuff he talks about in that essay that I really vibed with is like, yeah, look, there is something, it's like he talks about how like just the experience of going to a record store, like, like even if it was, again, like Blockbuster, even if it was Tower Records or whatever, that like, just that, this is before you had the permanent distraction device in your pocket, and you were just going and all you were doing is looking through the CDs and like listening to music that while you were there. This was just music time. There's no multitasking. There was nothing else going on in your head. And similarly, like just the experience of getting movies that way, it's like, look, obviously I'm not blind to the fact that there are advantages to the fact that other than some of the movies that you like, other than that, everything else is like at my fingertips at all times, right? There's like something that's good about that, but like it's also so disposable, right? It's like, yeah, you have you can so easily be like, oh, I'm gonna watch a movie tonight. What you end up doing is you spend like 2 hours like browsing and watching previews, and then you're like, you know what, I'm too tired to watch a movie tonight.
Yep.
And or like you start watching something, it's like 10 minutes in, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like
Piece of dicking around.
you can watch it whenever you want to. Whereas when it was like the special trip you made to the special place just to pick a movie that you were going to watch right then, and you were wasting your money if you didn't watch it in the next couple days. It was, I don't know. I think the quality of the experience is actually different and better.
I try to get some of that back with movie night. It's hard. I think moving forward in the future, I'll definitely be screening kayfabe when we're finished with it. Because of some family stuff, I wasn't able to go up to do some of the final edits. But I would love to do a movie night in real life where we just all watch a movie together somewhere.
Oh my God.
I mean, we talked about trying to do something for Halloween, Ben. Maybe that's what we do. Maybe we find a spot where we could just all watch a movie. I don't know who would be down to do that. We'll find somewhere. We'll all watch a fun Halloween movie. I think this movie might be something we can watch. Nudist Colony of the Dead. I've never seen it. I've never seen Nudist Colony of the Dead. Zombie nudists attack campers 5 years after the closure of the Sunny Buttocks Nudist Colony in various musical numbers. This is a real film, and it's got a solid 4 stars. It's not 4.2. It's a solid 4 stars. Nudist Colony of the Dead. I've never seen it.
Nor have I.
We'll vote. We'll vote on it.
No, but I actually do. I don't know about Nudist Colony of the Dead, but yeah, I do like that idea a lot. Actually, if we could do, come up here. We could do, but if we could find a place that we could do this, that would also, and like ideally people could also drink and like have, I think that could be really fun. Like not, just a little impromptu, nobody has to buy a ticket or anything.
Yeah.
We're just like, hey guys, make sure we announce at least a few days in advance. We're going to be at this place doing this thing. Or maybe there's even like, depending on where it is, maybe there's even like an RSVP link just so people can get directions. But yeah, that'd be good.
If you are a fan of the Child's Play movie and series, there's not a remake, but like a bootleg knockoff. There wasn't too many, I feel like, bootleg Child's Play knockoffs. Dolly Dearest. Have you ever seen Dolly Dearest, Ben?
I've not seen Dolly Dearest, no.
Denise Crosby's in Dolly Dearest and Rip Torn. You know Denise Crosby because you're a Star Trek fan.
Mm-hmm.
A toy manufacturer buys the Dolly Dearest factory in Mexico, where the malevolent spirit of Sanzia, a devil child, has taken refuge in one of the porcelain dolls and eventually takes control of his daughter. Dun dun dun.
Yeah.
It's a fun watch.
This is a 91.
This is 91. Highway to Hell is a good movie. It's a fun movie. An eloping bride is taken to hell and her fiance must pursue. Starring Chad Lowe, Christy Swanson, Patrick Bergen, Ben Stiller makes a cameo in Highway to Hell. That's a fun movie. You've never seen that? Okay, I'm pretty sure Ben's never seen Alligator 2.
No. What was the other movie you said you were pretty sure I hadn't seen? I mean, I'm sure you're right. I'm just curious.
I don't know. I'm going through so many right now. I'm trying to get to 92. There's so much that came out.
Well, let's talk about 92, right? Because
here we go. We're finally in 92. Okay.
Like I'm looking at 92. We've got Sleepwalkers, Lawnmower Man.
Lawnmower Man. What did you think of Lawnmower Man?
It's been too long. I have to go. I have to watch Lawnmower Man again.
Lawnmower Man is the new CGI. It's very 1992, where the internet is going to be a magical place that we can all live in. Kind of we do, right?
The early 90s, yeah. Army of Darkness.
Army of Darkness. We're in the same list now. I think we're on the same page. Candyman is 92. Army of Darkness. That's a great. I watched Army of Darkness on tour in the UK in the smallest little apartment in London, and it was one of the most fun times I had watching a goofy movie.
So my cat's named Ash.
That's right. You did.
I wouldn't necessarily think of this as a horror movie, although it's an interesting question whether and why. But I'm also seeing Death Becomes around here.
Death Becomes keeps showing up on this list, and I'm like, I'm good with it because comedy horror is like a thing now. We didn't think of it back then. Pet Sematary 2, which I did not like, is 1992.
Yeah, I certainly watched the original Pet Sematary. I don't think it would have, if I knew that there was a Pet Sematary 2, I don't think it would have occurred to me to watch it. There's I know now there's like some streaming service keeps showing it to me is like being like, you want to watch this? There's like a Pet Sematary prequel now.
Yes. Yes. And you're like, no, just stop. Stop.
No streaming service.
Yeah. You gotta talk to the streaming service.
Oh my God.
Like they're a sex pest.
Yeah.
Here's one. I've never seen this movie, and I kind of want to see it. It's called Innocent Blood. It comes out in 1992. Marie is a vampire with a thirst for bad guys. When she fails, like that right there, I don't understand how that works, but I have to see this movie now. Can you just imagine her like bitching to her vampire friends? Like, I don't know why I can never meet a guy. Every time I turn them, they leave. When she fails to properly dispose of one of her victims, a violent mob boss, she bites off more than she can chew and faces a new immortal danger. Okay, Robert Loggia is in this. John Landis directed it. Okay. Anthony LaPaglia is in it. We have to see this. Innocent Blood. I've never heard of this movie. Have you ever heard of this movie? Here's a movie you heard of that I refuse to watch. Alien 3.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's, I don't know. It doesn't really do that much for me. I mean, the first two, each in their own very different ways, are kind of perfect. By the time you get to 3, it's like, all right, I guess they're just gonna keep making these.
Speaking of shitty fucking sequels, we own the name. Let's keep barfing out movies. Amityville 1992. It's about time. It's about time for what?
Sure.
It's about time for this shit to end. It's fucking like that was really, guys.
Yeah. I mean, even the original Amityville, I don't know. I mean, this might just be, again, I don't know if I would have responded more to it if somebody had put the fear of the devil in me as a child, but it just doesn't, a scary movie about the devil to me is like Rosemary's Baby, because it's not really about the devil. It's about having your sense of reality fucked with.
Yeah.
Like all of this, I don't know. I mean, I guess the first 2 Omen movies work for me as a kind of, because they just sort of make, they just kind of make the devil this cartoonish horror movie villain, and that's fine in its own way, but but there's a certain kind of I don't know, there's a certain kind of devil horror movie that you really have to have, I think, some sort of innate religious fear of this for the movie to work for you.
Yeah, I also think The first Amityville Horror is about, right, the guy that moves into the house that a lot of people believe he made all that shit up, right? And then the second is their take on what actually happened in the house. There was real murders that happened in that house. And we actually had to have an actress from that movie. Diane Franklin was on the show recently.
Okay.
She does a nude scene in that. Prom Night 4. There's prom nights. Why? This is so fucking ridiculous. Death Becomes Her. Okay. The Stepfather movies, the first Stepfather, very unsettling to me. By the time you get to like Stepfather 3, come on, there's some red flags, ladies, that we're not seeing here. The stab wounds in this guy's got to be one of them.
Hellraiser 3, nobody's favorite Hellraiser.
Hellraiser 3, is that the one where the guy gets hit with the CD and turns into the CD Hellraiser?
It might be.
Yeah, that's the worst. So horrible. Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me.
Oh,
1992.
shit. That's good.
Children of the Corn 2. I don't remember Children of the Corn 2.
I kind of remember it, and I remember basically having a "what's the point of this movie" like reaction at the end. Like I enjoyed Children of the Corn 1. You know, it's and also the South Park adaptation of Children of the Corn is that is a classic South Park episode. They the kids want to go to a concert and their parents won't let them, so Cartman shows them how they can make all the adults go away by saying the magic M word, molest. And then it's like they do all the beats from Children of the Corn, with the young couple driving through and the creepy kids, the sacrifice.
Dude, Children of the Corn the first one is okay. Here's a movie I've never seen, and I had no idea they made the sequel to the first one. Maybe you've seen this, Ben. I've never seen Violent Shit.
No, I've never seen Violent Shit.
And 1992 marks the sequel, Violent Shit 2. Drilled by his deranged mother, Carl the Butcher Jr. takes revenge for the gruesome death of his father. Okay.
That kind of sounds like on the level of Christopher Moltisante's horror movie from The Sopranos.
I'm still in shock. There's a movie called Violent Shit. Here's a movie that has been recommended by people on this show. I actually haven't seen. Fred Olen Ray directs it, starring David Carradine, Dick Miller. Evil Tunes.
Evil Tunes. Okay, I'm not familiar with Evil.
Bert has a cleaning company and hires 4 women to clean an isolated house. They find an old book, a dagger, and a soul shred. And when one of them, Megan, reads an incantation, she unleashes an evil beast in our world, and they're evil cartoons. Evil Tunes. What else do we have? Needful Things, another Stephen King. God, he is just all over the place in the 90s.
I know.
Now we're in 1993. The first Warlock movie is good.
Well, before we do 93, though, I really do want to do one last
92.
One last plug for Bram Stoker's Dracula. And
is that 92?
That is 1992.
Ooh, I don't know why I didn't see that on this list.
Yeah. It's I saw it on here earlier. But yeah, no, it is such a ridiculously fun movie. It's even though they add this even though they add the romance subplot, it's like it actually feels like the source material in a way that like basically none of the other Dracula movies do. It's just such like it's just so like lush and over the top, and even the goofy ass Anthony Hopkins Van Helsing, is the she is the bitch of the devil, it's feed me. That is still to this day an infinitely rewatchable movie for me.
California is 1993. Jurassic Park is 1993. Also, it comes out before Jurassic Park. People don't know this. Carnosaur. Carnosaur came out.
Okay, and Jurassic Park's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that as a horror movie, although I guess I could see it. They're creatures that get loose, and you can make a case.
Also in 1993, straight to video, Amityville: A New Generation. In 1992, it was time. In 1993, there's a new generation. So again, we don't know what we want to do, right? We want to just keep trying to get as many how much can we squeeze out of this IP that people think is scary. Another anthology movie that comes out in 1993 that you can watch on YouTube that I really enjoy is John Carpenter's Body Bags.
There are a lot of, I am just looking at 1993, and for whatever reason, this one is like the most full of movies that I have not fucking seen. Like the rest of these lists, like I'll by this point I would have like clocked like several things. It's like, okay, saw that, classic, whatever. It's like, this is just full of like, I am just trying to find anything that I actually saw from 93. Like there's there's Leprechaun, which I passed by on the shelves of video stores.
I never watched Leprechaun until one day I randomly had to watch it, because by the time I watched it, they were already at Leprechaun in the Hood. So like the original came on, I think, regular television, and I watched it and I was like, nah, it's a movie. Here's a movie that for some reason, maybe because my internet is in Mexico, it's giving me the Spanish title, Cuando llama un extraño otra vez, which is When a Stranger Calls Back.
Sure.
One of my favorite. Actually, the beginning of that movie is one of the scariest things ever. Then it has this huge fucking fall off. There's a lot of horrible movies in the mid 90s.
No, there's like what looks like maybe 93, what sounds like probably a Cujo ripoff called Man's Best Friend.
Yes. Here's a movie that I think is still pretty appropriate to the moment we live in now. Psycho Cop Returns.
Sure.
Listen to this storyline. Psychopath cop decides to kill everyone who he thinks has broken the law. Like, that's it. That's it. All it is just reality television.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah.
There's a movie called Jack Be Nimble. That sounds horrible.
And like also, especially for like 1993, like this is, obviously cops haven't stopped, killing people and using excessive force and, doing all horrible things. But like, I think a lot of people forget like how much more blatant that shit was in the early 90s.
Like, before camera phones captured everything, people have to remember Rodney King really captured the nation by accident.
Yeah,
because it wasn't a front page story,
which was so unusual. It's not like George Floyd that there are like 10 people standing there with their cell phones, right? It's like the by and large, this is an era when like Daryl Gates could like, should be on TV and be like, yeah, we had to go in and beat a lot of Negroes this week. What are you gonna do?
What did Daryl Gates said on national? I guess it became national news, but he said, with cameras on him, about chokeholds, black people's veins are just different. And that's why they're dying in the back of these police cars. Their veins are different. Their necks are bigger. And that's why they're dying. It's not us. It's them and their big, fat Negro veins. Literally said black people's veins are different. And kept his job. It wasn't until the riots that he lost his job. Like, that didn't get him fired. I want people to just, for 5 seconds, we'll go back to your regularly scheduled bullshit programming and what. Just think about this for a second. The police chief, after there was a series of people dying on their way to the hospital, from strangulation in the chokehold, which was illegal, I think, in 82, 83 in Los Angeles, came out and said, nah, these guys are just different. He was not able to get ousted until he steps down. And that also had a lot to do with the fact that his son had overdosed around the same time as the riots.
No, it is the way that people's memories have disappeared, just how much worse this was back then, that it's like, I know that, like, there's this whole, I mean, some of it's just like whatever, news cycle, people have the memories of fruit flies, but like also, it's like, also there's this like weird commitment in a lot of people's parts in the 2020s to believing that there's been like an exactly even level of racism from the 1600s to present, like nothing noticeable has changed, at that time, that's like, it's like, no, you go back to like the late 80s, early 90s. It is just amazing how much worse it was at that time, right? I mean, that like you have like the culture really has shifted dramatically and in many ways for the better in that time.
And it's not like we're talking Jim Crow, Lynch era South.
No,
this is black mayor having Negro filled city council having Los Angeles. And the police chief is saying, hey, I know you guys may think we're a little heavy handed with you people, but it's just your necks and the veins in the neck, a little different. And when we choke the shit out of you guys, you're not falling over the way we need you to. And you are dying in the police car ride to the hospital. It's totally on you, brother. That is not an us problem. It is a you problem. I am done for questions now. I will see you guys at the forum. And no one said, I mean, people said stuff. It'd be foolish to say that no one said anything.
But it was like, that's like the kind of thing that at that time, that would have been like a concerned editorial in the LA Times. That wasn't like a, giant scandal. Like everybody's talking about it for a week.
Yeah. And it just kind of becomes who the guy is. This is the same person. This is the same police department that destroyed someone's home. I mean, literally broke it down to the ground. At one point, police looking for crack empty out all of the food for the children, because that's where people hide their crack.
Right.
When I'm hiding my crack, I always think, we put it in the cereal that I eat. That'd be real easy to find when I want to get fucked up later. I like a good fucking needle in a haystack chase for my drugs.
Yeah. It's like all those drug dealers. I feel like we were also hearing about a lot in that era, who were making so much money that they would just give shit away for free in Halloween candy.
You got to check the candy. People put drugs in the candy. Who the fuck puts drugs in their candy?
What kind of drug dealer is this? They don't like money?
Who?
It's like, you know what? I've got so much. I don't need to sell all of this, right?
What are we gonna do with all this crack? I don't know. Maybe just give it to the kids for Halloween candy. That's not. As a person that literally lived across the street from legitimate crack houses, when they would raid him, it would look like Benny Hill, like running outside the door, and the cops are. Never did I think that was the house to hit up for trick-or-treating. And if you've ever been around people that are doing like hard drugs like that, they don't really do a lot of shit other than stay in that house. They don't really leave that house. So the fact that it's Halloween, the last thing they're going to think is like, oh shit, we got to get candy. What are we going to do when the kids knock on the door?
Yeah.
Like that's not how that works.
No, not even a little bit.
Someone says, "Hey, boss, we got less crack than we had this."
Yeah. I mean, call me a vulgar Marxist, but I tend to think drug dealers are, motivated by the profit motive.
Not by just fucking. But that was like remember those ads where there'd be a drug dealer like a wolf, and he was like literally like selling drugs to kids like a fucking sandwich
I
board
don't have any
on.
fucking money. What are you talking about? Like, that's like, what are you gonna get? Like what's a child gonna be able to pay you for that crack? It's like they're gonna like just give you the like couple bucks that they had for lunch.
Can you imagine instead of in Blow where he's got all the rooms filled with money, it's just filled with Lunchables. I'm the king of the 4th grade drug deal. What do you want? Lunchables? Help yourself. Take 2, honey. Yeah, you're cute. Take 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Take a fruit cup too. I like her.
So I wouldn't have thought of this as a horror movie, but I will say actually on the list I'm looking at for 93, and it is, I guess, it is at the very least, it is a movie about horror movies. Is a movie I actually love very much, which is Matinee.
Ooh, wait, tell me about Matinee because I feel like I've seen it.
Okay, Matinee is set during the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's 93 movie. So here, I'm just going to read you the description. In October 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis occurs. The menace of nuclear war looms over the American South. Low-budget filmmaker Lawrence Woolsey, who's played by John Goodman, is in Key West, Florida, debuting his new film Mant, which which is like a movie. It's like a monster movie about like giant ants, or people turning into ants or something. It's and it's like the joke is he's like the John Goodman character in that movie. Like he has certain features of like Alfred Hitchcock or somebody, but he also has certain features of like, what was his name? Castle, the guy.
Castle, yeah.
They who do like the shaking seats and and all that stuff, right? There's a gimmick in the movie where people are going in to see Mant, and he has them. There's like a nurse's station in case somebody is so frightened by this movie they have a heart attack.
That is such a William Castle thing. Yeah. And this movie comes out in 93?
This movie comes out in 93, yeah. It's
so, can you send me, is it on Amazon or something? What is it on?
I'm sure it's on Amazon, yeah.
Can you, Mant?
No. Mant is the movie within the movie. The name of the movie is Matinee.
Would I be too presumptuous to say, could you text me that name, please?
I will text you that name.
I want to show you guys the difference between Ben Burgis and I. Now, the movie he describes is something I want to see. That's why I'm asking him for the name, because I want to find it. I want to watch it. This is a movie that I would want to see. I have not seen this, but it's on this list. The Satan Killer. Widowed alcoholic cop teams up with an old private detective to catch a laughing serial killer who rides Harleys. That, my friend, is the movie I want to see, because that movie is going to have some what the fuck in it, and that's what I'm always looking for in my horror movies, a movie with a whole bunch of what the fuck. There's a lot of movies I've never fucking seen. Some of these are foreign. Have you seen this movie called Darkness?
I don't think so.
A small community is besieged by vampires after he watches friends ravaged by in a convenience store. A lone avenger goes off to do battle with the undead, armed with a shotgun chainsaw. Oh my God. Why have we not seen this? Yeah,
that is definitely a Jason. That is definitely a Jason movie. I might watch that. It's not. It is true though. That would not be what I would seek out to see. Like, I mean, I'm just not gonna like the thing that it's like. I think there's like a kind of movie that you like a lot that's like, you sort of go into it knowing that there's a 95% chance it's going to be kind of shitty, but it's like, it'll be like, there's probably going to be some crazy stuff and it'll be really funny to tell people about later. And I don't know what to tell you. I'm usually more like, yeah, okay, I could watch that. I could watch something that might be good.
I love much like hiding your crack in a big box of Kix cereal. I like hiding good movies in a big batch of not good ones and then going, that's not bad. So again, there's some sequels in 1994. Now we're getting at the end of the year, 1994. The Crow comes out in 1994.
Oh shit, yeah.
The Crow is a perfect example of what we saw happen recently with Alec Baldwin, where a movie studio shoots in a place where there's not union labor. You can overwork the staff. I think a similar thing happened where a gunnery person got switched out, and a shot changed in the middle of the movie. They changed the way they were going to do the shot with Brandon Lee, and they didn't check to see if the spun round was out of the gun, and there still was a bit of the spun round in there. And sadly, we know the story of Brandon Lee. He passes away on accident in that movie. Definitely destroyed the man that was the actor that accidentally shot him. They had to finish the film with his stunt double. This was the movie that was going to push Brandon Lee over the top, as far as a legitimate actor, action star goes. And The Crow kind of sets the tone for what we're going to see later with movies like Blade and even The Matrix, as far as darker kind of superhero fare.
Yeah, it's been a long, long time since I've seen The Crow. That was definitely on VHS whenever I watched that. But yeah, I remember that movie being a big deal at the time. 94, so after whatever the fuck happened with 93, that's like a, it's like, oh yeah, I vaguely remember the Leprechaun, like flipping past the Leprechaun and like stacks of DVDs and never watching it. And it's like, other than that, there's like genre ambiguous stuff that's like on the list. It's like the 93 list throws in Matinee and Nightmare Before Christmas, right? But but 94, I'm actually seeing a lot of shit I remember. So there's New Nightmare, which we already talked about. In the Mouths of Madness, Mouth of Madness, Interview with a Vampire. There's Phantasm, which I liked.
Phantasm 2, right?
Oh, is that Phantasm 2?
Yeah, they take quite some time figuring out the sequel.
Oh shit, you're right. Actually,
because Phantasm 3 comes out, which is, I wasn't the biggest fan of that, but Phantasm 2, I was a fan of 2 because that's how I knew about Phantasm. I was too young to know about Phantasm 1. Phantasm 2 came out and there was kind of a revival of 1. So of course I saw 1 first and then saw 2 where they change out one of the actors, but then the original young person from 2 comes back for the rest of the Phantasm movies. And of course the Reggie character stays in all the movies. And if I'm not mistaken, Don Coscarelli directed every one, Phantasm 1 through 4.
Okay. That's Phantasm 3 in 94. But yeah, it's
Phantasm 2 is like in the 90s too, though, isn't it? Or is it late 80s?
Probably the 90s. But yeah, no, I had my wires totally crossed there. But there's also the Puppet Masters.
The Puppet Master movies, yeah. All 175 of them.
No, not Puppet Master, but there's the Puppet Masters, plural. That's the it's like a Body Snatchers remake.
Oh, not the okay. So you're not talking about the Charles Band Puppet Master.
No. I'm talking about this is the Donald Sutherland is in it. It's it's in that, I mean, like, it's funny because it's like there were like 4 movies that were called Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
There was a remake. The Faculty in 96 or 97.
Yeah, Faculty is 98. Like it might be a little bit like what we were saying about, Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer and, Urban Legends, all that. It's like maybe I just watched it at the right time, but it's like, man, I have a lot of nostalgia for the faculty. But yeah, no, this is a few years before in '94. There's like it's like it comes after the like however many movies there are, because I remember not that long ago, like a few months ago, Will Menaker did a thing on Chapo where he and Hessa, whoever that guy's, they watched all of the movies that were actually called Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which, like, again, it's like that movie was remade like a few times.
Like, IPs.
Yeah.
Can I cash in on an IP? Here's an IP that I didn't know anybody cashed on for a sequel. What is an Alfred Hitchcock movie besides Psycho that they made a sequel of probably almost 30 years later?
Oh, I don't know.
Guess. Just guess.
Jesus.
Popular movie.
I don't know. The Birds. What's
yes. Yes.
That
the Birds
so 2. I was trying to think of what they could possibly do a sequel of.
The Birds 2 Land's End. This is the synopsis. Birds go berserk and turn against mankind. Thanks.
Yeah, good job, man.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
Did not see. Here's a movie I've never seen. Someone mentioned this in the chat. It's a foreign film. It looks pretty. Peter Fonda's in it. It made less than $1 million at the box office. Nadja, this ultra hip postmodern vampire tale, is set in contemporary New York City. Members of a dysfunctional family of vampires are trying to come to terms with each other.
Sure.
Why have we not seen this?
I don't know, but I'd watch that.
I want to see Nadja. Nadja is, we have to find Nadja. There's a movie called Aswang. If anyone is Filipino, my first wife, who I spoke to not too long ago, and I reminded her that she terrified me for the rest of my life with all of her Filipino folk tales about ghosts. And the Aswang is like some sort of folklore legend in the Philippines that is totally frightening. But there's like this weird monster with a long tongue that like snatches babies out of the womb. It's fucking crazy. I didn't know there was a movie about that, so I won't be watching that. I will not be watching that movie because it's probably too scary.
Yeah.
There's a lot of movies in the mid 90s that went straight to video that were too straight to video for me.
I should say Puppet Master. Puppet Master, the final chapter, came out in '94. Now I'm sure they made like 20 after that, but it's because that is how that works.
There's a movie, Ben, and I don't know if you know why it's called this. It's called My Sweet Satan.
Oh, I don't know the movie, but I actually do know why it's called that. Because that is.
You want to tell people why?
Because when you play like Zeppelin records backwards, that's one of the things that people, and like if you're primed for it, you do hear it, right? That's like one of the lyrics in the played backwards version, "My sweet Satan."
Yeah.
Right. Which is like, it's one of those things that it's like the drug dealers and the candy. It's like I'm sorry, but it's like this. How are they making more money off of like putting this shit in the backwards?
I don't get it. 7. Oh, that's 1995. Okay, we went too far.
You know what is in '94 that fits in a funny way with some of the trends we were talking about earlier is Serial Mom.
Ooh, is that 94?
Yep.
94, dude, is a dark year for horror because I'm seeing these movies I've never seen before. The Kingdom? Oh, there's a show. Return of the Boogeyman. Never seen Return of the Boogeyman. Uli Lamel directed this. I should have seen Return of anything Uli Lamel directs. I'm probably watching. Yeah, I've never seen My Sweet Satan, but now I kind of want to watch it. But 94 seems to be a kind of a down year. Witchcraft 4 comes out. God, Witchcraft 6. They made 6 Witchcraft movies. The cashing in on the IPs in the early 90s, they were just like, come on. There's a few more bucks left in this, right? Oh, so fucking horrible. The Curse of Michael Myers comes out in 95. That's horrible. Horrible movie. Vampire in Brooklyn comes out in 95. Did not like that.
Sure.
Oh, God. There's some just, there's so many straight to video. Then they're just like, how can we just make more?
Yeah, Halloween Returns of Michael Myers.
Oh, God. The Halloween 90s movies were so bad.
Jesus Christ, Dracula Dead, loving it.
I remember that. They kept making, they made like 7 Howling movies. I had no idea.
That's so weird. Yeah.
Right?
I mean, the first is a classic, but yeah, that's Species. Species is.
I went to the theater to see Species.
As you know, so did I.
Look, I think we pretty much nailed 94 to 90 to 94. I think we talked about a lot of those films, what we think inspired some of those films, why a lot of those films are forgettable. We kind of moved beyond gruesome horror and franchise characters for true crime police procedurals, as Ben Burgis puts it, that set us up for the next 1995 through 99.
The reason, Donald, to answer your question, the reason Jason knows that is that it's a funny story. Since I saw Species with my grandfather, we because like we were judging by the 2 sentences in the newspaper description, and I was like, yeah, sure, you know.
This seems okay for kids. What?
Yep.
So it says, what's next? 90s rom-coms? Look, Bad Lefty, don't you fucking tempt me with a good time. Don't you fucking dare. Oh, I will go down a rom-com rabbit hole with you people. When I got divorced the first time, I watched The Wedding Singer probably every day for 3 months.
Yeah.
Cover your eyes, granddad.
That sentence that it's like the you know, I guess I shouldn't name the person, but there was a person that Jason and I met at a cafe in Rosarito who was very funny to me and very funny to talk to, who's been involved in journalistic things we're aware of, but that was but like this woman like had this she was just such a like salty older lady character from an old movie, and like and you know, and we were talking about, it was like why I was down there and whatever. I was talking about getting divorced. She was like, your next one won't be as bad. By the time you get to the second divorce.
She was the kind of coolest person. Everything about her was just cool. She looked like Cruella de Vil.
She did.
She was kind of more obnoxious and loud than me and Ben. And she's just fun. She lived a life. She's like, yeah, that's when I was in El Salvador doing journalism. And she didn't sound like that at all. I think she was from the South originally.
No. But like it captures the spiritual essence of talking to her.
Oh my God. I try to run into that crazy woman sometimes because she was so much fun. Yeah. There's something about living free, and the way she talks, it's like you're free. You are like the freest person I've been around in forever. That isn't, she just, the way she was viewing things, like she said, you can look me up if you don't believe me. And I did. I don't know if Ben did. I did.
You did. You told me, yeah.
And everything she said was true. Her movie reviews, some of them were still up. She had reviewed movies for a while, and she shit on a lot of movies.
Well, but that was kind of her thing. She was like, Yeah, and I asked them to send me to, El Salvador, and they were like, but honey, what about the death squads? And I was like, I don't care. It's better than having to watch another of these goddamn movies.
Yeah. And we were like, and she fucking dead. She was down there when there was like crazy death squads, dude. It's one of those things where people are talking to you and you go, she could be full of shit, but her outfit says she's lived a life.
No, that woman definitely lived at least one life. Yes.
So the world is a better place with people like her in it, and her journalism stories were fucking nuts. And again, I looked it up, and I was sure enough, she had all these stories about what was going on in El Salvador during the Dirty Wars. She was literally there. She is what we would call a leftist now, and I don't think she called herself one then. Did she say liberal? What did she say?
I don't think she used like a
I don't think she said liberal
descriptor, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think she's somebody who had those instincts very much, in that way that like, you're existing at a time when there's no, there's just kind of nothing, right? That there's like, that doesn't, I mean, it's like leftism as we think of it now. It's like it, I mean, it barely existed. I mean, you think like even in like the mid 90s or whatever, it's like, even somebody like, Alex Coburn is like, what is he doing? Right. I mean, he's writing for the Nation, where it's like half the people who write there love Bill Clinton. And Coburn is there, and he's like just expressing this totally different worldview. Like I always remember him saying about the Unabomber. I believe this is an exact quote. He's what back in the party we would have called a petty bourgeois individualist.
I know, sadly, there was something that came out about the Unabomber not too long ago, like a documentary, and there were people that were really digging his writing. I remember that. Was that last year that thing came out? Did you watch that thing, Ben?
No,
the Unabomber thing?
I just don't. That is to me, that is just some weird ideological version of like the chicks who fall in love with serial killers.
We found that word too. There was a Balia.
What's that?
Remember I looked up that word.
Yeah, I remember you looked it up. Yeah. No, of anybody who idolizes the fucking Unabomber, brings out my inner Stalinist. That's like gotta.
Somebody needs a work camp.
Exactly. Guess how much more industrial infrastructure we're going to have now? You're going to build it.
Janos says the rehabilitation of the Unabomber is such a low ebb in the intellectual history of the 21st century.
Hey, Janos is not wrong.
Janos, you're kind of right. And on that note, Ben, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to say this: Two Evil Eyes, this movie from 1990 that neither one of us has seen.
Yeah.
These are the directors, Dario Argento and George A. Romero.
Okay, I'll watch that.
Okay, I think we need to check this. Harvey Keitel is in it, and one of my favorite actresses, Adrienne Barbeau.
All right, kick ass.
I think we have to watch Two Evil Eyes at some point. Thank you guys for hanging out with us as we stroll down the end of history memory lane of 1990 to 1994 horror. We will be back tomorrow evening. JG Michael and I will be doing a cross stream where we interview horror filmmaker Brian Yuzna, where we're going to talk about his class-oriented film, Society, and a lot of the other things he did. Because originally, I don't know if you know, JG upped me on this. The original guy that wrote Society was a Republican, and he did not want to make it a movie about class at all. And Yuzna flipped the script on him and made it a very anti Reagan Morning in America movie. So
yeah, this is good, man. I've I will drop the follow-up plug. So again, Sunday, October 22nd, a week from tomorrow, I'd be debating Siaka at the Moroccan Lounge in LA. Doors 6:30, debate at 7. I will send Jason the ticket link so you can put it in the description. But yeah, this has been really, really good. Like I'm not gonna lie, I have current events being what they are, and some of the stuff I've been writing about and thinking about and arguing with people about the last few days that is like kind of the shit that like in some ways one of the like longest standing, like kind of one of the oldest arguments I've been having in my life, right? I've been going back and forth with people about this for so long, and it's been so grim. I have just spent the last few days just constantly being pissed off, and this is a good I am gonna, you know, I'm trying to take a day off from being pissed off all the time, so this was perfect.
Let's take a day off from being pissed off, people, regroup, and really think about why certain protest movements of the past that were massively large did not do anything. The largest protest this country has ever known happened during the war in Iraq, and nothing happened.
Yeah,
I got to have a very fun, sorry to cut you off. I got to have a very fun evening in Oakland with one of the organizers of that protest. And I have a certain feeling about protest. And this person's literally done this their whole life. And they came back and said, yeah, it's really not going to do anything.
I helped organize the protest on February 15th, 2003 at the state capitol in Michigan, which had 4,000 people at it, which is like unprecedented for, a protest at the Michigan State House. There might've been stuff since then, but like but at the time, it felt amazing. I don't know if the combination of that and the stuff happening everywhere else around the planet, the largest coordinated protests in human history, February 15th, 2003.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there was a point, on February 16th where one of Dick Cheney's aides told him while he was drinking his morning coffee and, drawing up his plans to torture people. I don't know if one of his aides was like, "Oh, do you know those are the largest protests in human history?" It's like, no shit. Okay, well,
yeah. That's this is what my friend, I won't say his name. This is what he said to me. He said, we weren't affiliated with any political parties at the time, and we weren't tied to any workers unions, so we had no labor component to the protest, so we couldn't shut anything down really. He goes, we shut down a few ports for a few days, but ultimately that was it. And all power did was wait for us to go home.
Yeah. I mean, I think that part of the problem is that the goal at that time, like, I just don't know that there's anything we could have done. I mean, short of having that, basically short of having an organized working class that didn't really exist and having a connection to it that certainly didn't exist. Short of that, so if there was like a fantasy world where everything was totally different and there could have been general strike, like short of that, I don't know that there's anything the anti-war movement could have done to do the immediate goal, which was to stop that from happening. I mean, like I think the anti-Vietnam War movement ultimately was somewhat successful, and and I think that the over the course of time, as it spread into the army itself, and you had all these soldiers refusing orders and shooting their officers if they insisted too hard, that you had enough domestic unrest that actually, that actually shows up as a consideration of the Pentagon Papers, that it's like, okay, we don't want to, we need to keep some people here, right, to keep a lid on all of this. I think all of that ultimately did end up leading to the war ending sooner than it would have otherwise. But like the time scale to do something like that is just like on a completely different level than like we're going to do something in February 2003 that's going to get Bush and Cheney not to do this in March 2003. And that's, this is the, I'm not going to start channeling our hospitalized brother Matt Christman here, but like this is kind of the fundamental tragedy of being really invested in commenting on politics, from the left, right? From the perspective of fighting for a more humane society, that the disconnect between your sense of moral urgency about how bad things are and your actual ability to control the situation is the kind of thing that can drive somebody completely crazy. And that's again, that's why it's good to have spent the last 3 hours talking about 1990s horror movies, because I'm gonna lose my mind if I spend another day thinking about all of this.
Well, don't lose your mind. You have a debate. You have to be ready for the race baiting. Be ready for the race baiting. Remember, both hands up. The race baiting. Go watch. Don't watch any movies I said watch till after the debate. Go watch all black shit. Be ready. Go watch 10 episodes of Good Times. Watch all the Tyler Perry movies. Just be prepared for any of his.
It's gonna be it's gonna be a Rocky training montage, except like I'm just watching like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
But I'm Apollo Creed. I'm Apollo Creed yelling at you about how you don't want it. You got soft, Burgess. Stop watching black shit after Get Out. This man is a debate killer. He is not afraid to use race as a weapon.
Oh, nice.
There's no easy way out. Ben's looking in the mirror, staring into the abyss. There's never and the fucking fight scene montage, the training montage music comes on. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. This was a lot of fun. I will be with Ben October 22nd. I'll try to be as quiet as possible. The last time I did have Kuba with me in the rafters when your thing in New York, and we were talking a gang of shit. It was a lot of fun. I will be back, like I said, tomorrow, definitely Tuesday. We have a great show with the author of Dying for Capitalism. So we'll be kind of back to our more regularly scheduled programming. I guess that's what you guys are used to. Someone asked, are they pivoting the show to be something more pop culture? It's like, remember, this show started off as I'm a musician. I don't know who the fuck you people think I am. But, there's not books behind me. It's tour posters. So, but don't argue with your friends on the internet. It's just the fucking internet. And there's nothing anyone can do like individually. And your moral outrage is bullshit. And all the people that are trying to take advantage of that moral outrage, it enrages me. And I think that's selling out. Kind of pandering to really desperate, upset people. So I'm going to keep doing these streams where no one's watching and we can talk about horror movies and have a good time. Because maybe we need to have a good time for a little bit. And on that note, we are out.